Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Long Island's Offshore Wind Supply Conference. I'm Congressman Thomas Suozzi. And we're going to keep things moving along today. I'm asking all the panelists to be crisp in their remarks, keep things moving, and make sure that we can finish on a timely basis. We've got about, I don't know how many people, there are 150 people that signed up to watch online. I don't know how many people are actually on, but welcome to everybody online and everybody in person. We're very excited to have you here. Listen, this is all about a win-win-win. Win-win-win, not wind-wind-wind. Win-win-win. It's a win for the environment, okay? Wind energy is a win for the environment. We want it to be a win for business. We want it to be a win for big business, big suppliers, big developers. We want it to be a win for local suppliers right here on Long Island and throughout New York. We want people to make money off of going in to the wind business. So we want to win for the environment, we want to win for business, and we want to win for working people. We want to win for unions. We want high-wage, high-skilled jobs go to people so they can live a decent life here in the United States of America. So we want this to be a win for all of those different parties, and that's doable. It's so obvious it can be done if we just put the hard work in necessary to make this happen. So it can happen with wind energy, it can happen with everything we do regarding addressing climate change. A win for the environment, a win for business, and a win for working families so that they can make enough money to live a decent life in the United States of America. So that's what our conference is about today. You know, the president has announced that he wants to cut emissions in the United States of America by 50% by 2030 when compared to 2005 and go to net zero by 2050. Siri just reminded me that the president said he wants to have 30 gigawatts of wind power by 2030, 30 gigawatts of wind power by 2030. Right now, wind is about, it was 8.4%, so let's say it's 10% of the energy supply in the United States of America. We've got to double that by 2030 at least. So to do that, we need to all be working together. Now I'm doing stuff in Washington, D.C. We've got this big infrastructure bill. We've got the big reconciliation bill that we're working on. There's all kinds of components in there to try and deliver a green economy in the United States of America. After we've been debating about this and fighting about this for so many years, some people in America are still saying that climate change is a hoax, which is hard to imagine. Here in the United States of America, those of us in New York, we know it's obvious. I heard someone say the other day at one of our Ways and Means hearings, a third of America has a drought, a third of America is on fire, and a third of America is having flooding. I mean, it's obvious that we have to do something dramatic. I remember when Al Gore was campaigning about climate change. He first campaigned about it in 1988. I got an award from Al Gore in 1996 or so for cleaning up polluted sites. He was talking about climate change then. He said he was going to run on climate change. Later on he didn't, but then he ended up doing the movie and stuff like that. We still haven't taken it as seriously as we need to. I feel it finally, right now, at this time in history, because of the president, the previous governor here in New York, and the new governor are taking it very seriously, and we need to take it seriously. But it's got to be everybody working together so that everybody benefits from this change. The environment, make our lives better. Business, make money. Unions, make sure people make enough money in their jobs so that they're benefiting from it as well. So it's all doable. We just have to put the energy in to make it happen. So we've got a lot of very interesting people here today. We've got the environmentalists here. We've got Adrian Esposito on behalf of the environmental world of Long Island here today. She's going to be fantastic. We've got the big developers here. Equinor and Ørsted are with us here today. They're the big developers of wind energy. We've got local suppliers, not just local, but beyond local. We want to get more local here. Vestas, Roman Stone, Tpi Composite. We've got labor here. We're going to be hearing from the president of the AFL-CIO today. This is like a major, exciting thing. It's going to be the next speaker right after me. We've got the IBEW here. We've got other unions here as well, but IBEW is going to be speaking, Chris Erickson. I'm particularly fond of the IBEW. My grandfather served in the IBEW. He helped put the lights on top of the Empire State Building. That's like, he was in the IBEW, Local 3, for almost 50 years. changed our family's life by having that type of job. I remember my uncle telling me, he said, I never saw my father cry until I got a scholarship from the IBEW at the communion breakfast. But it changed their lives by living in a union family. And we've got government people here. We've got NYSERDA here today. We've got the Labor Department here. We've got a not-for-profit, the Business Network. So we're trying to bring everybody on board to have this conversation, for people to network, to meet each other, to figure out how can this benefit you. We want to benefit the world, we want to benefit the environment, but we want to benefit business and we want to benefit labor in the process. We want everybody to benefit from this and seeing this as being a common goal. So everybody goes out there and is a cheerleader to say, this is a win for everybody. This is obvious to us. It's tougher in other parts of the country where the oil and gas industry is so prevalent. I see it in Washington when you think things are so obvious. This is going to happen. This is going to get done. And then people say, I'm not voting for that. And you find out, this is a major industry where they live. We have to make sure that when we're talking about these things, I'm the chairman of the thing called the Labor Caucus. I founded the Labor Caucus in Washington because every time we push for an agenda, no matter what it is, we should be thinking about how's this affecting working men and women in the process? How's it going to increase their wages, increase their benefits in the process? We can't be talking about environmental projects and the environment in theory. We've got to make it real life so it has a real life impact on the transitioning to those new jobs. It's no good if you shut down a plant over there, everybody loses their job at the plant, but then maybe someday in the future you'll open another green energy project somewhere down the road. They've got to be happening together and try and figure out how you can do these things in the same areas. So that's what we're trying to do here as part of this project. Okay, in New York, we've really done a fantastic job here. Again, the previous governor pushed this hard. The new governor is going to push it as well. But Ecuador, for instance, is working with the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management to build a wind farm 20 miles south of Long Island out in the Atlantic Ocean. It'll be, we hope, be placed in service by 2025 and power more than 1 million homes. And we'll hear about that in a few more minutes. Orsted's working on their Sunrise and South Fork wind farms off the coast of East Montauk, but that will power over 600,000 homes. We'll hear about that as well. And New York has set a very ambitious goal, more ambitious than other places in the country, 70% clean energy by 2030. So again, we want to see how we can benefit right here on Long Island as far as our businesses as part of the supply chain and our working people as well. So I want to thank 3 people in particular that have helped us pull this together today. First is Phil, is it Ruggili or Ruggili? Where's Phil? Is he here? Oh, he's not here. Oh, he's online? Okay. Phil Ruggili from the Offshore Wind Supply Chain. He's also at the Composite Center. He's been a tremendous help in getting this done. Roger Clayman from the Long Island Fed has done a fantastic, Roger is here, so let's give him a round of applause. And Mariah Dignan, who used to work in my office and is now working for Climate Jobs. Let's give her a big thank you for all the work that she did here as well. We couldn't have done this without them, and I want to thank my staff, who's really done a fantastic job. We have so many different things going on all the time. They really did a great job pulling this together. Give my staff a big thank you as well. Okay, I'm now going to introduce Liz Shuler. Liz Shuler is a remarkable story. She made history. Rich Trumka was the head of the AFL-CIO in our country. He passed away unexpectedly. I've spent a lot of time with Rich Trumka since I've been in Congress. He gave me some tremendous advice. He sat me down at a breakfast one morning and said, he says, listen, I know you're pro-labor. We need you to be all the way pro-labor, unequivocal pro-labor. You're either with us or not. No half measures. And you know what? He was right. And I've tried to do that as a result. As a result of his untimely passing, they had to bring in a new president. And they brought in the first woman to ever serve in this position in the history of the United States of America, the head of the AFL-CIO. She came out of a union family as well. Her family was in the IBEW. She was in the IBEW as well, so we've got that. I haven't met her in person yet. She's going to be online in just a second. I'm excited to see her. Oh, she's right there. I can see you on TV, Liz. And we couldn't have been more fortunate. We were shocked when we found out that she agreed that she would come and speak at this. I think Roger pulled this off for us, so good job, Roger. But She's been working on wind energy for a long time. She understands how important this is. I read her bio as well. She's been working on getting young people, for a decade, working on getting young people involved in the labor movement and thinking about the future, because we have to really make labor a part of our future. And I'm just gonna, Liz, before I introduce you, I'm just gonna say this one more thing, okay? In America, I'm 59 years old. In the 1980s, we went through this whole thing that Japan and Germany were gonna take over the world with the car companies. And business changed in America, and they focused more on just the shareholders. They didn't think as much about the community. They didn't think as much about the workers. Well, we've produced enormous wealth in America since then. The Dow Jones has gone up 15 times or 18 times, 1,500% since the end of the 1980s. The GDP has gone up 900%, 9 times since the end of the 1980s. Workers' wages have gone up by less than 20%. So we've produced enormous wealth, which is a great thing. I'm all for producing wealth. I like producing wealth in America. That's a good thing. But we need to share that wealth with the people who go to work every day. So we've had this big debate. You know, we take unions for granted here in New York. It's such an obvious thing to us. It's not like this in the rest of the country. Okay? They don't like New York. They don't like unions in every part of the country, unfortunately. And we have to constantly be pushing this message from a position of strength here in New York to other places throughout the country. There's a debate in the country about the minimum wage, okay? $7.25 an hour. It's not that in New York, but that's what it is in 20 some odd states in our country. Now put that in perspective. If you made $10 an hour and you worked 40 hours a week and you worked 50 weeks a year, $10, 40 hours, 50 weeks, that's $20,000 a year with a $10 minimum wage. If it's $15 an hour, you work 40 hours a week, you work 50 weeks a year, that's $30,000 a year. You think you're gonna be able to buy health insurance? You think you're gonna be able to buy a house? You think you're gonna be able to pay for your kids' education? You think you're gonna be able to put away money for retirement on that type of wage? It's impossible. Donald Trump became popular in America because people are just unhappy. A lot of people are unhappy with their lives in our country, and they're looking for somebody to blame. A big part of it is that we're losing our middle class. So we have to figure out how can we, in everything we do, even wind energy, think of how are we gonna create jobs where people can make enough money so they can afford to buy a house, educate their kids, have health insurance, and retire one day without being scared. That's what Liz Shuler is working for every single day in the United States of America. She is a unique leader who's gonna take us into the next decade pushing for more labor in the United States of America to raise a decent wage. It's a great honor for us to have here today. Let's hear it, ladies and gentlemen, for the president of the AFL-CIO, Liz Shuler.
Thank you. Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Congressman Suozzi, when you call, we answer. And when I heard you were keynoting and sponsoring this event with our friends in labor and all the other folks here at the table, I cleared my calendar. So I am truly honored to be here with you. And Congressman, I just want to thank you for your strong voice for working families. I'm so glad you brought up Rich Trumka, who was our leader, and we are still, of course, processing and grieving. But I can just say that he loved you, and we want to thank you for all the work that you've done for working families, not only in your district, but for workers all across the country, and chairing the House Labor Caucus and being a voice on these issues of climate and so many more. We are grateful. Good morning to everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm beaming in from Washington, D.C., and I'm so happy to be joining this incredible morning that you have planned. It sounds like you have a great crowd in person, but also online. I can hear folks. I know Roger Clayman's there. I think John Durso might be there. I heard obviously Chris Erickson is there. Hello, Chris. And to all my friends in the labor community and everyone who's there from all walks of life who care about the climate. I don't know about you all, but I got fired up hearing the Congressman's introduction. And I'm inspired because I see the future. And that win-win-win that the Congressman just talked about is right there for us to grab. And I believe that a modern, resilient, and inclusive labor movement is what is going to help us meet these challenges of the climate crisis. And I don't need to tell you, New York, working people are seeing and feeling the impacts of climate change. The congressman mentioned it. Of course, we had Ida recently flooded the New York transit systems, parts of Long Island saw record rainfall. It's happening all across the country. Wildfires, heat waves. Climate change is already here, and it's happening in every community, every zip code. And from your local news reports, we see it, but we also see it in the IPCC report, right? We're hearing the alarm. We have to transition to a clean energy future. The question is how? And I would say the answer is with good union jobs. And that's why we are building a labor movement that will meet the moment. And just look at how our movement, our government, industry leaders, environmental groups have all worked together to bring offshore wind to the Atlantic coast. It's truly a model. And our progress working together shows that the way to respond and adapt to the climate crisis is through a high road strategy with good union jobs. You're going to hear me say that over and over again. That's the only way that we can meet the urgency in front of us. Because our response to the climate crisis also needs to address the unacceptable inequality in our society, and the congressman mentioned it. It also has to contribute to racial equity and be conscious of the people and the places that are affected by these changes. And unions are the most powerful vehicle to deliver that progress across the board. When you look back, I'm going to take you into a little bit of history. You look back at the early days of energy jobs. Think about it. Unions transformed low-wage, dangerous work in the carbon economy, industry by industry. We challenged those inhumane conditions and the relentless pace of production and made those jobs into good careers that had good wages and benefits that could support a family. And that's how unions built the middle class in America. So now the question is, who will build and benefit from this next transition, the clean energy transition? Because it can't be like it was in the past when working people were the ones suffering and were left stranded. The opportunities of the clean energy transition are opportunities to create good union jobs that will benefit local communities here in the United States for generations to come. And that's what we mean when we say that the energy transition depends on a high road, high wage strategy. And this emerging offshore wind industry in the US is a major frontier for clean energy infrastructure and for growing also domestic supply chains. I don't think we talk about that enough. From raw materials to offshore wind turbines, the components of those turbines. We can make those here in the United States. And as offshore wind continues to scale up, we have to make sure that the jobs scale up with it and that we're creating good union jobs here in the United States. And offshore turbine manufacturing, offshore wind turbine manufacturing could be the centerpiece of this. A lot of jobs. If you think about all of the pieces and parts, the nacelles, the generators, the blades, the foundations, substations, cable, vessels, offshore wind turbines are massive, folks. And so just imagine if we made all of those materials here. It takes hundreds of tons of steel and copper and specialty metals to build a single offshore wind farm. And that is why reshoring and growing the American supply chain is going to be such an engine for economic growth. And the number of small parts even that goes into each component is huge. And that is a big opportunity for small manufacturers on Long Island and across the region. You think about all those companies that have sophisticated processes that have been in the fabricated metal space, aerospace, specialty electronics, other sectors, right? They are great candidates to supply the offshore wind sector. This is an historic strength of your economy. So we see the potential, and we are already leading in the offshore wind sector. Of course, here in New York, New Jersey, but also Massachusetts, Virginia, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and of course, Maine is coming on with floating wind in deep water along with the West Coast. So the labor movement is on the move in all of these places. And we know that just this month, construction began at the New Jersey wind port, the first facility purpose-built for staging, assembling, manufacturing, all of the related offshore wind projects on the Atlantic coast. It's an inspiration for us. And that project has the potential to create hundreds of union construction jobs in the area. And the groundbreaking ceremony included the signing of a project labor agreement between AECOM and AECOM Tishman, I believe is the name of the company, and the United Building Trades Council of Southern New Jersey, AFL-CIO. So it's exciting to see so many of these projects underway. The work is being done. We're beyond the call to action because it's all in motion. And labor is not only at the table, we're leading the way. And the Long Island Federation of Labor alone has been building local movements and coalitions to support offshore wind for over a decade. I'll just mention too, in Rhode Island, workers in the building trades unions built Block Island Wind Farm. I'm sure everyone's familiar, the first successful offshore wind farm in the US. And we did it, again, with a high road strategy alongside the developers. And I know many of you in the room were involved in that project. In Virginia, a high road, high wage partnership between offshore wind developers and labor is on track to be a model to replicate in other renewable industries in other regions across the country. And of course, here in New York, we're seeing so many signs of progress, and it is absolutely inspiring. We can do this. We can build the state coalitions with the stakeholders, labor, business, community, environmental groups, government, academics, to boost the investment. We can build the support for the industry through lease and permit processes. We can lift up the Opportunities Long Island pre-apprenticeship program to make sure that economic development provides long-lasting careers, not just jobs, but careers, and grows the middle class in local communities. This is so important for our economic recovery, and especially for a gender equitable recovery. And I'll just say a couple words about that. Most of you know that women lost almost 1 million more jobs than men due to the pandemic, with Black and Latina women suffering the greatest job losses. And our apprenticeship programs, I keep saying, are the bridge to these high growth, high demand jobs, especially for women and people of color. And we are laser focused on that recruitment in the labor movement. And highly skilled union labor is the best way to make sure that these clean energy projects are safe and are successful. So I know that there are plans in the works. There's a lot of discussion around a national offshore wind training center on Long Island so that people can earn a global wind organization certification. This is a perfect example of partnership, bringing people together and ensuring that, use the term pipeline of good jobs, and making sure that people, again, are looking long-term, right? and the Long Island Federation of Labor, the Building and Construction Trades Council of Nassau and Suffolk Counties, IBEW, Utility Workers Local 1-2, Suffolk Community College, the Blue Green Alliance, Orsted, Eversource, all working together to make that vision a reality. And certainly working with unionized manufacturing firms, academic institutions, state federations, local representatives from key energy-related affiliates. We will make real progress around building a domestic union-made supply chain. And this is how the labor movement is going to continue leading the response to climate change through high road economic development, because we know what it means to build and reimagine the future. The foundation of our movement, as everyone knows, is solidarity. And the threat of a changing climate is going to impact all of us. No community is safe from this existential threat of climate change until every single community is safe. And putting racial justice and gender equity must be at the front, must be front and center. Today, I'm thinking of Long Island's own Tony Muzaki, a labor leader who spearheaded a renewed call to action both for environmental justice and for occupational safety and health. He spoke about the health problems workers face early on from handling harsh chemicals, and he connected the dots and knew the environment would be damaged also. So he was one of the first to talk about solidarity between the labor and the environmental movement. And he saw that they had a shared problem, right? Of big corporations putting profits above the health of workers and communities. And in Tony's words, we are here to struggle together for the best aspirations of working people. And to me, that just says it all. It encompasses what a union-built clean energy future means. And we know what solidarity looks like, the power that it can hold to change entire systems for the better. And so this is the moment to grow and to leverage our solidarity, because the path to a clean energy future runs right through the labor movement. So thank you all for laying the foundation for offshore wind projects, and with them, a growing middle class on the Atlantic coast. And not only will your work have a ripple effect, across the entire region and in the offshore wind energy industry, but it will be a blueprint for other parts of our country and other renewable energy sectors too. So I'm so excited. I'm with you in solidarity for the long run. I just want to say thank you, Congressman. Thank you all for letting us participate, even though it's virtual.
Great job. So Liz, I know you're with us for just a few more minutes. That was really fantastic. We're so grateful to you. That was really, you said my remarks inspired you, your remarks inspired me. And we have just such a great leader in you for this a three-legged stool of success we're looking at, from business, the environment, and labor all working together to make this a reality. So what can we be doing here on Long Island to make sure that the jobs we create in the future are union jobs, to make sure that everybody's linked up together?
Well, we have a number of things we can be working on, of course, and you sitting in Congress, you're doing it, but the investment piece that we're now seeing that's right now pending before Congress, and making sure that, we're encouraging through incentives to bolster the industry and those labor protections that we're attaching to investment, but making sure those tax credits have domestic content requirements, of course. We want to make sure that we're working in partnership with the developers, in top-down, partnerships with, firms like Orsted, where we come to the table and we say, hey, it's a win-win-win, as you said, for all of us to make sure that we're working together to create a clean energy future, while at the same time giving opportunities to folks who are in the local communities where those projects are taking place. We call them place-based strategies, right? And so we think that there's a tremendous potential if we are intentional and we are working together proactively. None of us want to see a repeat of what has happened in the past through these transformations. If you recall, when the deindustrialization of our country and when firms were offshoring and manufacturing was in decline, communities were left behind. And we saw what happened. Workers were left stranded. So that should not be.
We're doing that in Washington right now. I have major legislation as part of the Ways and Means package related to solar tax credits to try and produce solar industry. Same thing with geothermal. Same thing with wind. Same thing with cars. So we need to be able to provide this investment at the federal level to make it more. You know, the big challenge we face is everybody says, oh, you know, if you do it union, it's going to be too expensive. That's one of the big challenges we face. They're wrong. It ends up costing less money by having skilled workers who know what they're doing, who make the company and make the community stronger by having these folks. And government helping to push this forward with providing incentives to go into these industries are part of putting that together, and including requirements that you have it locally sourced, as you said, or making sure that you have prevailing wage. We'll be talking about that some more today. Well, Liz, we want to thank you very much. You're really a great leader. I look forward to seeing you in Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Liz Shuler again for her great leadership, for being here today. We're just very fortunate to have you as part of our conference here today. Okay.
Thank you.
We've started the whole labor conference. I think we can let Liz go. Liz, you don't have to, I'm sure you got 5 other meetings to do, okay. So now, let's go to business, okay? We have with us today a wonderful speaker who, I don't know, are you from Norway originally? Yes, she's from Norway. So she is the president of Equinor USA. She's the president of Equinor USA. Now, Equinor is an international energy company. They work in 30 countries in the world. They have, I forget now, is it 21,000 employees? 21,000 employees. And they have 2 major projects going on here right in New York right now that they're trying to build in the Atlantic Ocean, south of Long Island, that will be a major transformation of the wind energy here in this region. Our speaker is going to come forward and tell us about that, and we want to find out how can this not only benefit the environment, not only benefit their company, but also benefit local suppliers and labor in this area as well. Part of this effort today is for us to be networking with each other, to figure out how we can all win in this process. We want this company to be successful. We want them to win. But we also want our local businesses, the environment, and our labor unions and working families to benefit as well. So please join me in greeting the president of Equinor Wind, who is responsible for the offshore wind portfolio in the United States, including Empire Wind and Beacon Wind, projects off the coast of Long Island. Let's give a big round of applause to Siri Espedel Kindem. Dankjewel. Dankjewel.
Good morning. Good morning and good to see you all. Very happy to be here in Long Island. I was also very happy to have my second day here. It's my second trip to Long Island as well. Lovely to be here, a lovely place, and also a lovely site. So good to see you also in real, and very good to, to also know there's even more virtual participants as well. And I'm not sure if Liz Shuler left, but I was going to say, good to see you again, Liz Shuler, and hope to see you soon. So thank you, Congressman Suozzi, for having me here today. So, your leadership in Congress on offshore wind is appreciated, and I'm so glad that you've arranged for this conference. Very good to be here. This is also an opportunity to be together. It's been a tough period, and to focus on these positive investments in New York. And after 2 decades of Long Island and New York fighting for offshore wind power, we have finally come to the time to see this investment slowly coming into reality. The global transition to net zero emission and meeting increasingly ambitious state and federal climate goals is a significant opportunity for us all. This transition requires investment in new technology and processes and new ways of transporting and manufacturing. New supply chains, been spoken about, sourcing and production are the heart of building this new offshore wind industry and economy. The energy transition is the defining challenge of our time. The world still needs a lot of energy, and it must be affordable, it must be reliable and accessible. Offshore wind is critical to addressing that need, and Equinor is committed to making offshore wind a success in New York. We ourselves look at ourselves as a partner in this bold new initiative. So Equinor and the entire energy industry see this enormous opportunity in the US for offshore wind. The economic, environmental, and financial potential and benefit from this relative new energy source are large and robust. And, as spoken of, Equinor is a broad energy company based out of Norway. We had a presence in the US since 1987. We have 5 decades of experience as an energy operator offshore, and now also 1 decade of offshore wind experience. So we then also regard coexistence with other industries and the communities we work in as part of our license to operate. And we're committed to the energy transition and have ambition to be net zero by 2050. So we then, of course, committed to developing the Empire and Beacon Wind projects together with our partners BP. And objective when we're doing so is threefold. This is about sustainable coexistence of multiple ocean users together with offshore wind. And it's also about respect and commitment to listen and engage with a diverse set of interests. And building an offshore wind project development industry. So this is not only about building the projects, it's also building a project pipeline and industry in parallel. And our project portfolio is then able to create thousands of jobs, both during project development and operations. And we are committed to training, to providing skills and expertise that can be utilized for decades to come. So Equinor is then also committed to New York and to harnessing business to creating a supply chain and developing local partnerships that will be the engine for this industry as we go forward. And this is the same thing we've done with our energy projects all over the world. Developing good relations based on consistent information and transparency with all stakeholders is a priority for us. And from the day one we came starting in New York, we've been engaging with local communities, fishermen, elected officials, regulators, and others. And the Biden administration's ambitious goal of 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030 has complemented to the work that New York has created a great deal of momentum. And so like many of you on this conference, we are very proud to be part of this growing industry. So then let's turn to Equinor's development plan for offshore wind in New York. The current project will account for over 30% of the New York's state ambition goal of 9 gigawatts and will power 2 million homes. And then again, while doing so, we have a strong emphasis on sourcing and hiring locally, while also balancing the expertise needed for this nascent offshore wind industry. And as you can see, this is an enormous undertaking. But Equinor is willing to invest so much capital into this project because we understand that these are good investments. And offshore wind is a paramount to achieve our low carbon goals and also creating an industry for the 21st century. And as you're all aware, in order for this industry to be sustained, a local supply chain must be nurtured and developed. And Equinor is dedicated to building a local supply chain and manufacturing, evidenced by our work at the O&M base, operation and maintenance base, and station port at the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, and also the Port of Albany tower fabrication facility. So we are just not investing in offshore wind industry, but this is also about, investing in New York itself. And then, Equinor wants to prioritize a local supply chain for offshore wind and believe it is one of the most critical aspects to development of not only our project, but the industry as a whole. Of course, a big component of this is working in partnership with local communities, suppliers, and labor unions, and engage them in future opportunities as we build and harness this supply chain. And this is what we've done in the Port of Albany. That's all what the Port of Albany is based on. Combining forces with established companies, like the Mormon and Welcome, to help create a premium manufacturing facility that will start by producing components for Equinor. Notice I just said start, because this is just the start of a bigger, there's other one to go to stop for other operators to come and use this facility. So this we can see that it's going to be built both tower, transition pieces, and other components as offshore wind continues to grow along the East Coast. And this is what's all about when we're talking about building a local supply chain. And along with the supply chain investments, Equinor is also planning to invest millions of dollars in port upgrades. So we're working closely with NYSERDA and other state agencies to further strengthen the state position as the US hub for offshore wind. So port infrastructure upgrades are vital to clearly as good examples that were given both with the Port of Albany and also the SBMT. And Equinor believes that US workforce, higher education systems, and institutions are a strong asset to investing in production domestically. So we're planning to invest in and help develop this workforce over the coming years. And our commitment then includes providing on-the-job training and hiring locally when possible, working with the communities to grow workforce development and local investments. And not the least, engaging and learning from a rich network of communities, suppliers, and labor unions. But last, but certainly not the least, I'd like to touch on our commitment to working together with the laborers to build this industry. When building the offshore wind industry, it's fortunate to have a large pool of skilled workers in the New York area. And Equinor is looking forward to negotiating with the New York contractors and the Building and Construction Trade Council on a project labor agreement covering the construction activities in this complex, large-scale infrastructure project. Our plan is then to create thousands of jobs, to train individuals, and provide more than a job, but skills and experience that can be used, and just want to repeat that, in decades to come. So thank you again, Congressman, for having me today, and we're looking forward to the discussion and also to answer some of the questions coming along.
Thank you, Siri. Let's give Siri a big thank you. Is this? Yeah, this is on. Okay, so that was great. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think we're going to ask some questions. This is only going to, the question and answer portion here will only last for about 10 minutes at the most. You can go to these microphones on the side. Let me just ask some quick questions of the audience first. How many people here are here because they're with an environmental group? Raise your hand. How many people are here because they're with a government agency? How many people are here because they're with a labor union? How many people are here because they are with some business interest, either a big developer or a small developer or a supply chain person that wants to make money out of the wind industry? Good. So that's a good breakup of the crowd that we have here. It's a nice mix of the people. And there's a bunch of people online. There's about 100 people online also. So let me just ask you this first question. So Equinor does business all over the world. Do you have any idea what percentage is from offshore wind energy that you do, of the business that you do all over the world? Is it mainly offshore wind that Equinor does, or do they do all kinds of things?
Well, as I said, Equinor is a broad energy company. So this is, the offshore wind is actually part of the growing part of this. So we are, all the energy spectrum all the way to all oil and gas, and then we have the offshore wind and renewables. So renewables, as we are transitioning as a company, is going to grow. So if we look towards 2030, that's going to be 50% of our investments.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where is the wind energy that you do now?
Good question. Well, I worked in the energy space for like 30 years, and I was happy to be part of the renewable when we did start it up, and then we started up in Europe. So then we started up in the UK, you know, and then we also, when we were building the project, was also building an industry. So the big of the operation part is still in the UK, but we're looking globally for new opportunities. So we are many places. We are in Europe, in like the Poland, the Baltic, and then of course the Asia is important, but not the least is the US. As I said, we've been here in the US in 1987. This is a very good place to be. We see the state support for with ambitious goals for offshore wind, and now we also see the, you know, at federal level, great ambition. So I think this is a very good place to be. Now we're also seeing the business in growing, and then again, being part of an industry build-up.
So what can we do to help you to make sure that we accomplish our goals, which are to try and get high-paying jobs for people and also to bring local businesses in to try and be part of the supply chain? So just so people know in this room, I've had previous conferences in the same room about the aerospace and defense industry. It's really an enormous industry in my congressional district on Long Island still that people don't realize. It's the vestiges of what Grumman used to be here, but there's still humongous industries. There's $2 billion in federal contracts for aerospace and defense contracts on Long Island, and another $2 billion in subcontractors. So we have these metal fabricators. I think Liz Shuler talked about. We have metal fabricators. We have sophisticated electronics. We have a lot of the same component parts and the skills that can be helpful. So what can we do to help put you in touch with those folks so that we can profit from what you're doing right here on Long Island with our workers and with our businesses?
Just firstly, I'll just say I appreciate very much being here. This is the kind of discussions I like to have, and I think these are the way we like to work. We like to have an open dialogue. We like to have transparency, and we would like to listen. This is also about listening in how things are, you know, to understand the local communities. And we have some great, you know, representatives working for us here in Long Island and elsewhere where we are. I think I maybe have a bigger approach. You know, what do we need? And then I'll take my industry hat on, and I think what we really need is to get the project and get the industry moving. And I think it's extremely, and I do believe in the market mechanism, but then again, you've described clearly the borders and the expectations there is for this industry, and we do truly understand that. But you know, I'm very much looking forward then we get into the space where we see this project are now, that we're maturing them. We're doing all the necessary, you know, geotech studies, we're doing all the permitting, and we will come to a position where we actually do the construction and installation, and we will see this, you know, both the investments, you know, come through. We will see this, you know, energy, as I said, 2 million homes. But this is going to be, I mean, this is going to be work for us. It's going to be like 30 years stable work that we can provide by putting this project up. So I think, you know, what I need is really, we need to help you, and you know, is really to get this project going, and then we will see the industry build.
Well, let me know how I personally can help you to try and push this project along, because I know from 25 years in government that government is awful as far as getting permitting processes done and getting things moving. The bureaucracy is interminable, and everybody's like, what's taking so long? And it's awful sometimes. So use me and my team and the folks here to help you to get your permits done. And then when we help you, we'll remember what my grandmother always said to me, which was, you like a me, I like a you. So we'll help you, and you help us. So we want to try and make sure that everybody is a win-win-win here. So we want to try and help you. Is anybody wants to ask a question from one of these two microphones for Siri? Go ahead, go right over there, sir. And you can go ahead too, sir. Go ahead. You can go ahead. Run in front of him. You're younger than him.
Yeah. Thank you, Siri, and thank you, Tom, and good morning. My name is Sam Mirian. I'm a contractor from the state of New York and also represent a contractors association on Long Island. I have been studying the offshore wind business for the past 3.5 years. I know some detail about it. Based on my study, the lion's share of this work is manufactured and performed overseas, and the lion's share of the labor of installation is done offshore. I'd like to know, Tom, what is your resolve and what is that you could do in bringing this work, majority of this work, into United States?
So that's really the purpose of today's conference, is to have that conversation. We have a major the blade manufacturer coming today, Vestas. Who's here from Vestas today? Raise your hand if you're. The Vestas right here. We have other contractors here as well. And part of this meeting today is to figure out how do we make sure that we get a piece of this business, big piece of this business, right here on Long Island, and in New York, and how do we get the workers trained? For example, there's somebody here from SUNY Maritime. Who's the SUNY Maritime folks? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a very famous congresswoman, I'm sure you've heard of her, Siri. She and I don't agree on everything, but we both sponsored a piece of legislation to deliver $750,000 to SUNY Maritime Center for them to do an apprenticeship program to train people to do offshore jobs. So we want to do more of those things. We want to do something here on Long Island where we create a global center for maritime apprenticeship training jobs. So that's what this conference is about. It's to have the different players together. Siri was sitting here before. People who found out who she was, they came running over to her and say, "Oh, I want to do this with you. I want to do that." That's going to happen more when you get off the stage now. That's going to happen to you for the rest of the day. So everybody I want people to get a piece of this. A big part of life is networking and relationships. That's what the purpose of this conference is. I'm sorry for the people who are online. They're missing this whole thing. But networking and relationships is a big part of being successful. So we're hearing from one of the top experts that has a major project they're trying to get done. We want our people locally to be a part of it. We're going to have one of our conferences, the panels today, the second panel, is specifically about the supply chain. So, okay, let the other gentleman ask a question as well, Sam.
Good morning, Congressman and Siri. Thank you both for all of your comments earlier. I wanted to continue on your point, Congressman, about collaborative relationships. I came all the way from Westchester County this morning. I'm doing some consulting with the county, and our interest is try to create these collaborative relationships so that we can deal with the entire supply chain and also try to get our workforce involved in the wind projects. So the question to Siri is, clearly there's supply chain issues from not just tier 1, but all the way down to, say, tier 16. So how do we develop that distribution so that some of the supply chain and workforce comes to other areas that are not just right next to where the projects are happening, but the rest of New York?
I think this is a very valid question, and this is where we often get when we are moving around and we're not that, not that acquainted as a company. So there's different tier levels, as you said, and we're still early phase for this project, just so I want to emphasize that. And the work we're doing now is usually at the tier 1 level. But then again, there are expectations to local benefits, and there are expectations that we will generate local jobs in this area. And then again, this is the connection to the different tier level. This is something we, of course, as a company is asking for. You heard my speech. So this is part of the communication we have at the different tier level to the supply industry. Then again, there are also ways of getting connected, and I think the NYSERDA has some very good, way of being. You can connect as a supplier, but then again, this is also approaching this kind of maybe the bigger players where you see. But I think we're just starting up, and I think we will see. We talked about this big constructions offshore, and all these things, but there's so much to that, more than that. I try to describe. We are actually going to build an operation and maintenance base, planning to do so in Brooklyn. And we are working on the Port of Albany, where there's going to be manufacturing. And I think we will definitely see, when you are building up this more manufacturing or industry element, you will see that the supplier industry, local supply industry, will benefit for that going forward.
Siri, try and answer this question for me. So when people think of a wind turbine, they think of the big blades. So that's one big component, obviously. Then they think of the big tower that's there, and then there's obviously the huge foundation of the tower itself. So those are all big, major construction pieces. what other type of components are there as part of a wind turbine? Where are there opportunities for businesses to try and be a piece of that?
I think, you know, if you look at this offshore wind turbine, you know, there's many elements. And I think you're going to see that there's we talked about there's the nacelle and there's the towers and there's the blades. And there's different elements where probably be different suitable for fabrication in many places. And we shouldn't forget about, this is about, even though we talked about these big elements that can be fabricated, it's also about, it's going to be a moving marine industry around this. There's going to be big construction installation vessels, but there's going to be people needed to be transported back and forth. So I think that the kind of the vicinity also of these bigger things.
So there's the shipping, there's the construction.
The maritime element.
What are some of the electronic components that are part of it?
Well, there's about, you know, the cables, and we are fabricating cables, you know, in the US, you know, at the moment. So these are the cables. You have the substations, and you will.
What about inside the turbine itself? Is there anything inside other than the?
I'm sure there's a lot of smaller things or bigger things inside. But I think we need to remember the complexity.
Somebody's got to tell me that later today. I'm trying to figure out what's inside these things.
Yeah.
But Jack knows what it is.
Just
okay.
Just one
You'll
more.
talk about it. Who are you, Ross Gould? Or one of the panelists. Okay. Trying to see your name from here. Okay, very good.
Just one more comment,
Yeah.
if I please.
Yeah.
I think we also need
No,
to.
get off the stage. What are you doing?
This is good to be in Long Island, I must say. I like this. I like this. Just, this is, you know. So just one comment. We shouldn't forget that there's a lot of local, I mean, more the infrastructure elements coming in here. We're going to be, you know, local substations. There's going to be landfall. There needs to be connecting, you know, supply industry to that. So that is, you know, a bit different from other kind of more offshore industries. So there will be infrastructure that needs to be built, and that should gain for a lot of this kind of local supply industry that could be used. Just want to emphasize that. So not only about the wind turbine, it's also about the infrastructure that needs to be built to be able to have it more on the land side in addition.
Okay, let's give Siri a big dankjewel. Dankjewel. Thank you. Now I have to get. I know Dave Manning is here to say something, and this gentleman wants to say something, but let's get the next panel up here as quickly as possible, okay? Everybody come on up here. Amanda Schoen from the U.S. Public Affairs Specialist from Vestas. Vestas designs and manufactures, installs, and services wind turbines across the globe and have more than 140 gigawatts of wind turbines in 83 countries. They've installed more wind power than any other supplier, and they use data to interpret, forecast, and exploit wind resources and deliver wind power solutions. We have Mark Watson, who is the Regional Administrator of the U.S. Department of Labor. Raise your hand, Mark, so everybody sees who you are. And then we have Adrian Esposito, who everybody knows and loves. She's fantastic, one of the main environmental leaders on all of Long Island from the Citizens Campaign for the Environment. We have Chris Erickson, who is from Local 3 Labor Union, a great friend, wonderful guy. Chris Erickson Jr., I should say. He's a fifth-generation member of the IBEW. We have Peter Lyon, who's the senior advisor for offshore wind. He helps from NYSERDA. Are you here? Yeah. Peter Lyon from NYSERDA, who works on this stuff all the time. So I think that's our first panel. I did everybody on the first panel. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to ask each of you to speak for a couple minutes, and really just a couple minutes if at all possible, and then we're going to try and have a conversation about different things that are going on. The main purpose of this part of the panel is to just talk about the state of the wind energy on Long Island generally. You know, what's happening right now? Where does it stand? The next panel is going to be more specific about the supply chain itself with different businesses that are involved in this industry. So this is to give us a big picture as to what's going on overall in the wind energy space. David Manning, do you want to say something?
30 seconds, Congressman.
From Brookhaven National Labs.
Thank you. You asked about the guts of the windmill. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity going on in there. I just want to point out that the whole operation of the windmill is based on the generator. Generator takes magnets. The magnet technology is being researched on Long Island right now.
What did you call it? Oh, magnets. Okay.
Magnets, yeah. What the windmill does is it generates power with a generator, which requires magnets, and the magnets get so big that they're too big for a windmill. So superconducting magnets, there's a lot of technology inside these machines that is still evolving by the day. And a lot of that work is going on in Long Island. I just wanted to put that piece in because, yes, there are big blades, there are a tremendous amount of opportunity in the foundations, but the guts of the machine also have got great potential for the future. That's all I wanted to say.
Very good. Thank you.
And that's going on at B&L with GE and others. Thank you.
B&L is Brookhaven National Labs. Let's give Dave Manning a big round of applause. Very central figure on Long Island for many, many years, done many great things. Okay, Amanda, you'll go first, and then we'll just work our way down. 2 minutes, a little bit about yourself, what's going on in the wind industry generally. Amanda is from Vestas.
Yes, hi, so I'm Amanda Shane. I'm the U.S. Policy Specialist for Vestas. We are the world's leading turbine manufacturer. We have over 130 gigawatts installed onshore. And as of last year, with the acquisition of our former joint venture, MHI Vestas, we've brought offshore wind fully on board and have over 7 gigawatts installed offshore. So my position is very much government relations, public policy, labor relations, and it's been kicked into overdrive in the last year or so with the incoming administration. And it's been a wonderful change because we finally see some real action both at the federal level with the new permitting projects moving forward, including here in New York. There's new lease auctions to be held by BOEM in the New York Bight, and great commitments from Biden on 30 gigawatts by 2030. And similarly, we've seen a huge commitment from the states as well, both in their pipelines, the big picture, bringing in new power for the states, but also finally in starting to bridge the gap with both labor, with the next generation of workers, with academia, trying to train people. And now we've got a real challenge of how we pull all of this together. As the permitting moves forward and as these projects start hitting the water, there's going to be a huge demand for supply chain, for workers in all factors. I think Liz and Siri both mentioned in their remarks that there are more to it than just the blades. There are a lot of those small subcomponents as well. And there's some real challenges as well that we face. There are closed steel foundries in the Northeast. And if you want to start fabricating these big, huge components, or it's going to take a big investment to get things back up and running again. But it's a challenge that I think we're all really looking forward to facing together and growing this. I think we see this as a huge opportunity to both tackle climate change and create good paying union jobs. So
Amanda, how does New York compare to other states? You're responsible for what area?
So I handle federal and state policy.
Oh, so you're big. So
Yeah,
So how does New York compare to other places in the United States?
So New York has the largest pipeline with a 9-gigawatt pipeline, and yet we see that as the floor, not the ceiling, and I think New York agrees with that as well.
So New York is more aggressive than other places in the country?
Absolutely, and I would also say that New York has been leading with trying to partner industry, like smaller sub-suppliers, with the larger industry. We're seeing, Center for Economic Growth, for instance, has been doing a lot of work trying to connect with small manufacturers in adjacent industries, so aerospace, maritime, exactly, defense industries. Yeah, which is, a lot of them are right here.
Aerospace, defense, and maritime. That's right here on Long Island.
Exactly.
So we need your help to bring more stuff to Long Island. Oh, let's let the next guy go. Okay, Mark Watson.
Thank you, Congressman. I'm very happy to be here today. My name is Mark Watson. I'm the Regional Administrator for the U.S. Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division here in the Northeast region. Some of you may be familiar with us. We enforce a number of federal labor statutes pertaining to wages and working conditions, including the Fair Labor Standards Act, which most of you have probably heard of, which is the federal minimum wage and overtime law. It also has child labor in it, as well as record-keeping requirements. We also enforce government contract statutes that require the payment of prevailing wages when projects are federally funded. Some of you may have heard of the Davis-Bacon Act, which requires the payment of prevailing wages on federally funded construction. You may have also heard of the Service Contract Act, which requires the payment of prevailing wages on federally funded service contracts. So we do investigations. We are an enforcement agency, and I'm glad to be here today to learn a little bit about the wind industry and how we might be able to help the folks who are engaging in it and doing the work better understand their requirements under these laws. We have a person in each one of our district offices who is an outreach specialist that can reach out to the various folks here. I already have a couple business cards, one from Grant and one from David, I think. We're going to reach out to them and give them some technical assistance on some of the things we do. I will be here for the whole day, so if any of you want some assistance in terms of learning your obligations under federal wage laws, by all means, please let's talk, and we'll hook you up with someone.
Thank you, Mark. So Mark is with the U.S. Department of Labor. He's the Northeast Regional Administrator for Wage and Hour Division. Marty Walsh was here in New York the other day. I was down in Washington. Marty Walsh was the Secretary of Labor. I was supposed to meet with him, but I had to go down to Washington. He called me up and said, oh, I heard about your conference. Maybe we should send somebody. So we would appreciate Mark coming here. But the labor folks that are here today certainly should say hello to Mark and not let him out of the room too soon. Okay, with that, I want to introduce Adrian Esposito. Adrian is well known. She and I have partnered together on so many things for many years. She's a fantastic Long Islander and a fantastic environmental leader, really recognized not just on Long Island, but throughout the state and the country. So Adrian Esposito.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Hello, everybody. My name is Adrian Esposito, Executive Director of Citizens Campaign for the Environment. I have 2 minutes, but luckily I talk very quickly. So what is the state of wind? Well, the state of wind is that it's going well. We're living in a transformational time right now. We don't always think of it like that, right? We don't think of this as being an historic time or a transformational time, but that, in fact, is what it is. But it's up to us to make sure we're successful. How are we going to do that? How are we going to fight climate change? I mean, we've got droughts, fires, flood, ocean acidification. We have the disappearance of species at an unprecedented rate. We have these rainstorms that are actually causing people to die in their basements because they couldn't get out in time. We had $1 million worth of damage at Stony Brook College from a rainstorm called Ida. We're a mess. How are we going to fight it? How are we going to win? There's one answer, it's one word, and it's one truth. And that is the answer is together. We have to do it together. I started a coalition called WindWorks Long Island. We work closely with our brothers and sisters in labor in that group. We work with civic groups, environmental groups, faith-based groups, big businesses, small businesses. That's how we're going to do that, with elected leaders that are wise and care. That's how we're going to win this battle. Now, I just want to say to the wind companies, both Ørsted and Equinor, make no mistake, we're going to hold you to be environmentally responsible, and we want the projects done in the most environmentally responsible way. She's shaking her head, yes, thank you, Siri, appreciate that. But we want the projects done. So we need your voice. I've been on all of these hearings. There are people out there who still don't want wind. I was on the BOEM hearing the other day. There were groups in New Jersey saying, hit, pause, and delay. Hit, pause, and delay. I testified, I said, we've been on pause and delay for 20 years. That's how we got a climate crisis. Now we need to put our finger on the fast forward button. But my point is, we need your voice. So if you're not on the WindWorks Long Island listserv, please see Maureen over there, raise your hand. Jordan, raise your hand. Give them your business card. We are tracking all of the regulations and all of the permitting processes, and when it's time for public comment, we let you know, we send you the link, we make it easy, you just have to open the email, you can speak and testify, but silence doesn't make change. Your voices make change. And if your voices aren't heard, there will be no saving the planet, there will be no jobs. Because the naysayers, they're coming out. We need you to come out as well. So thank you so much for being here today, but you can't just come to conferences, you have to show up at those, I see a lot of heads shaking, yes, at those permitting hearings, because honestly, it really does matter. It matters to BOEM, it matters to NYSERDA, it matters to elected officials when you hear the public's voice, so your voice matters. Our saying at CCE is we ask you please to show up, stand up, and speak up. In the virtual world, you only have to speak up, so it's even easier now. Thank you very much for being here today.
Very good. Let's, Adrian has done so much good work on the environment as a leader for decades here on Long Island. She's really fantastic. Let's give her a big thank you for the great work that she does. You know, the flooding that took place in New York City where people died in their basements, and I had places on Long Island where people were wiped out as well because of Ida. New York City was designed to take, and most places were designed to take 1 inch of rain per hour. That's how the drainage system was set up. About a decade ago, they changed the rules in New York City and some places out here to take 1.5 inches per hour. Some people are fighting to make it 1 3/4 inches for new construction. But you're never going to change that number very much beyond 1 inch, 1 1/4 inch per hour. During Ida, we had 3 inches in 1 hour. We'll never be able to build the resiliency to take care of 3 inches per hour for all of our drainage. People underestimate the importance of drainage. We must reverse what's going on. We have to deal with resiliency and that's very important. But we have to really wake up. This is real life and death. And when you see it, when you see these people's houses, when you see the fires in other parts of the country, you know, we'd see it on TV, we kind of take it for granted. People they're being ruined. Again, a third of the country droughted, a third with fires, and a third flooding. It's real life stuff. Next, Chris Erickson from IBEW.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Congressman Suozzi, for allowing us to be a part of this, for doing the work, to getting so many different voices that are critical to get this work done. Thank you for those powerful words. It's tough to follow. But I am Chris Erickson Jr. I'm an assistant business manager with Local 3, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I'm here on behalf of our business manager, Chris Erickson, who sends his regrets. He's traveling abroad for work, and he describes himself as a climate warrior. He's been the business manager of Local 3 for over 15 years now. He's also the chair of the International Executive Council of the IBEW. So he's in a position across the United States and Canada talking to the IBEW on what is and has been a little bit of a complicated issue for us, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about that. But at the end of the day, he knows he's also a grandfather, and he tells everybody that he can't live with himself, that in 50 years from now, when his grandchildren say, why didn't Grandpa do something more about this? So that's where his heart is. He talks about climate, he's been talking about climate, but he takes action as well. And when we talk about a just transition within the labor movement, within the fossil fuel industry, we acknowledge that it's got to be more than just something we say. It needs to be action around climate and economics and accountability. So we know the critical task that's ahead of us. It's not very often that we could say together, if we succeed on this, it's a win-win-win, but we're changing the world. The scientific proof is there that if we do this right, we're going to change the world for the better, and that's an opportunity based on key commitments by the people in the room here, from elected officials like you, Congressman, the Biden administration, the Department of Labor and the Secretary of Labor, government agencies that are here, the developers and operators, the employers that are going to hire and fulfill these good wage, family sustaining career jobs, the manufacturers, the suppliers, the labor movement like the Long Island Federation of Labor, the state AFL-CIO, the building trades here on Long Island and in New York City and New York State, the environmental and the community groups, the trainers, the educators. We're all working together, and this is what needs to be done in order to save the planet, and we're committed to that. So thank you again for having us.
Great job, Chris. Thank you. Chris didn't know he was speaking today until I saw him at a baseball game the other night. They told him that he had to show up and do this. Okay, Peter Lyon from NYSERDA. Peter?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me to the event today. It's actually my first trip down to Long Island on the NYSERDA staff, so it's really good to see some familiar faces in the audience today, I see Marge in the background, Danielle, Roger, you know, a whole group of stakeholders that are helping to drive industry development from a number of perspectives here in New York State. At NYSERDA, I'm the senior advisor for the offshore wind team, where I'm primarily focused on the economic development aspects of the industry. That's everything from infrastructure to workforce, as well as growing the localized supply chain. Our work is primarily driven by our climate leadership and community protection act, which was passed in 2019. It set forth the nation's most ambitious goals associated with renewable energy implementation, which is 70% by 2030, as well as an 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Key to delivering on those is 9 gigawatts of offshore wind, which is the largest commitment of any state within the U.S. To date, we've got 5 projects and 5 ports being developed. It's anticipated to lead to 6,800 jobs, as well as deliver on $12.1 billion.
Peter, tell us what the five projects are.
Economic activity. So the South Fork Wind Project, Sunrise, Empire Wind 1, Empire Wind 2, and Beacon Wind.
Okay, so they're represented here. They're all represented here today. Yes. Okay. Orsted and Equinor.
So yeah, we do all of this work through our procurement activity, which is based upon the cost of energy, the economic benefit that a project would bring, and then project viability. And I think most everyone is interested in that economic benefit component, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we get into the question.
All right, Peter, thank you so much. Let's give Peter a big thank you and all of our panelists. All right, Adrian, we're going to get into more details about the stuff going, but what do we need to be doing right now to make sure that Equinor and Ørsted get their projects up and running? What do we have to do to help them?
I think, honestly, the biggest thing we could do to help them is to be testifying at those hearings. Yesterday, actually last night, was the Sunrise Wind Farm's first scoping hearing in front of BOEM. The next one is Monday at 1 or 1:30. Is it 1? 1. And then there's another one next week also. So there's scoping hearings, which means, you know, what should they look at in the evaluation process? And then there's a EIS hearings, environmental impact statement. So literally, if they really could get, I'm not trying to plug the WindWorks listserv, but that's how you're going to track it. There's 5 projects. All of them have different schedules for hearings and public input. And let's be honest, you're not going to do it on your own. Let us do it for you. But we need people to speak. It's that, and they're all virtual now. You literally just press the button, they unmute you, and you speak, you get 5 minutes. You don't even have to say 5 minutes.
So I said in some of my remarks earlier that Equinor could be up and running by 2025. Is that possible?
It's absolutely possible. And the Ørsted one, Sunrise Wind Farm, is actually a little bit ahead in the regulatory process. That could be up and running by 2023.
So we've got to really push hard now so we can reach those dates.
I think it's important for people to know we can do this. We're really on the great precipice of change. And I want to say, again, this is not an overstatement. This is not a slogan. This is a truth. We change the way we produce energy. We change the world. Okay. We can change the world by doing this. Okay, Amanda, you know, we heard a gentleman speak earlier from Westchester. He was talking about the 16 tiers, okay? So that must be a term of art. Is that a term of art, 16 tiers? Is there really 16 tiers, or he's just making that up?
Oh man, I am not an engineer, so I can't tell you exactly
how
many
many
tiers,
somebody else
but I
about
do know there's a number.
All right, so what's the relationship between the developers and you would be like a tier 1 supplier, right?
Yes.
So you don't have the 16, but so what do you supply? What does Vestas supply?
So we supply the turbine. So that includes blades, nacelle, power conversion module, some of the internals.
You got a lot of the batteries, the magnets?
The magnets, yeah, exactly.
And so what can we do to get you to do business with Long Island suppliers?
So that work's already ongoing. Part of it is we need to identify all of the different number of small sub-suppliers, and some of that work is ongoing. Again, again, I said Center for Economic Growth has been starting to put together supply chain mapping. We've been meeting with like the Nassau County IDA and some of the other IDAs, and that work needs to continue as well. Before COVID, we used to do a number of what we call supply chain days at Vestas, where we try and get out into the community, set up some information, allow folks to kind of come to us, see what it is that we're looking for. And I think, as restrictions ease, let's knock on wood, we'll be able to continue some of those in-person events too. And then I also want to put in a plug for the business network for offshore wind. So I think Ross Gould is here, and that's a really good network as well if you're interested in getting involved.
Ross is going to be speaking in the next panel. So one of the things that I'm really interested in getting, because I've asked my staff about this and I asked Siri about it before, I want a list of all the things that you need. And then we need to see if those companies are here on Long Island that can provide that stuff. So it's got to be very
granular.
Very
Absolutely.
granular.
Yep.
This is the type of component part, because we have all these defense and aeronautics businesses that are a lot of the same as the guts of the turbine.
100%. I mean, and there's you can go all the way down the list to like nuts and bolts to even like paint for blades. I mean, there's a lot of different.
We have a lot of
components.
high-tech component
Cabling,
parts
wiring,
as well.
absolutely. And it's the thing about it too is it's got to start now because there's also a certification process. And I think a lot of like the aerospace, the reason why we call it adjacent industries is because these aerospace and defense companies and maritime companies are already used to producing equipment at a very high precision manner. But there are companies that still have to go through certification process so that we know that these components aren't going to fail in high stress situations. Okay. And that process can take a while. So that's why absolutely, let's sit down together, let's figure out this list, let's see who we can tap into. And also, we also want to make sure that we're reaching out to minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses. And that's not always information that's easy for us as a private company to get. And again, I think New York, the state has been doing work to try and compile that information because that helps us, just expand who gets
Use
these
me
jobs.
too, even though I don't have the specific responsibility. I'll drive the ball and make it happen. So, all right, Mark and Chris, we want to get labor unions involved with this stuff, okay? And you don't specifically push for labor unions, Mark. You push for Davis-Bacon, though, which has that beneficial impact. But how's it going with unions getting involved in this stuff? Have you been reached out to, or has the IBEW been part of this process? What are the other unions that could be? I see other unions that are represented here today. What other unions could be involved in this going forward?
Yeah, the IBEW has been involved in renewable energy since the development of solar panels and solar energy. We've been teaching our apprentices for decades. We do offshore winds, onshore wind with the IBEW throughout New York State. So IBEW has been involved with this. Local 3 has been involved with this locally, federally. We realize that there needs to be a commitment here, and there are translatable skills from what we do within the IBEW, how we train our apprentices, and certainly we know there's an opportunity and a commitment to a just transition, not only for the workers, but from the fossil fuel-based.
So let's just explain that term of art, just transition. What do you mean by that? I know what you mean, but tell everybody what you mean.
So you can kind of look at it a couple of different ways. A just transition at the end of the day means there should be no economic harm to the workers in an industry that is no longer a viable option for this planet. So the IBEW, this is what I kind of alluded to before, the IBEW, over 750,000 members across the US and Canada, we see ourselves as the energy union, right? When you talk about power generation, distribution, transmission lines, construction, operation and maintenance, that's a lot of what we do. We represent hundreds of thousands of members that have good union wages and benefits. At the end of the day, if you close a fossil fuel powered coal plant in upstate New York, the ripple effects there can decimate an entire community. They can take somebody's livelihood and throw it out the window where they're able to support a family. So there's a lot of elements to it for the workers. There's a lot of elements to the labor standards and protections that we feel need to be attached to this new opportunity, and also the communities need to be involved for the people that are affected at the end of the day, so that any just transition would be equitable and inclusive and focus on the dignity of those workers as they transition into hopefully this new industry.
So this is very real life for a lot of people, okay? When they said we're going to shut down the Keystone Pipeline, the people who would have worked on the Keystone Pipeline didn't get those jobs. Would have been smarter, I think, if they built, a huge road there or something, just to create some new jobs in the process. You know, when you shut down a nuclear plant, or you shut down an oil or gas-fired plant or a coal plant, when you shut it down, those have high-wage, fantastic jobs. People who work in those jobs make enough money to buy a house, to educate their kids, to buy health insurance, and to retire one day. Those are great, fantastic jobs. You're going to close it down. You want to have we don't want to hear about some theoretical thing that you're going to do in the future and out in the Midwest in the plains where you're going to have the solar panels or you're going to have the wind turbine. You want to know how's it going to affect me right here? If I'm losing my job at this facility, what job am I transitioning to that I'm going to have a real job that I can take care of my family? It's real life. It's not made up theoretical stuff. So we have to take all the theoretical stuff we've been talking about for years, do conferences like this, have meetings like this, and say, how in real life are we going to save the planet, make money for business, and get people good jobs? This is real life stuff, real impact stuff. So that's what the purpose of this is that concept of just transition. Okay, NYSERDA, you wanted to talk to us about some more details of the different things that you're trying to do to push. So NYSERDA, tell everybody what NYSERDA stands for, and then tell us what you're trying.
Tell us what stands for the New York State Energy Research and Development.
New York State Energy Research and Development Agency? Authority. Okay, so tell us about local content. What are you doing
so local
to get
content
local content?
Is driven through our procurement process. It accounts for 20% of our overall grading criteria when offshore wind developers bring projects to us through our open solicitations. So we're looking at all in-state expenditure as well as direct job creation in that evaluation. I don't think New York, I don't think NYSERDA is bashful in wanting to become the manufacturing hub of the offshore wind industry. And we drive that language and opportunity through our procurements with the localization of primary component manufacturers, O&M port facilities, as well as staging and marshaling facilities. And what we're seeing through our first projects is the development of an ecosystem from Long Island all to New York City up to the capital region, where we're seeing these large port infrastructure assets being committed to and built out, and primary component manufacturing locating to the state, which then enables, from our perspective, the growth of a supply chain from that and the participation of our advanced manufacturing sector throughout the state. In my past job, I worked for the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Center up in the capital region. So I know the importance of local, small to medium-sized manufacturing enterprises and the benefit that they're bringing to our local economies with high-paying jobs and the opportunity to enter this new clean tech sector. So we continue to push for those opportunities, and one critical component is the supply chain database. This is a database where a company can come in, register through our profiling efforts, and list out the competencies as well as where they see the ability to participate. Through our procurements, developers as well as their tier one contractors are obligated to go to that database for any procurement efforts that exceed $5 million. We've seen procurement efforts going lower than that as well, combing through our database from these tier ones. So it's integral that as a company, as a labor union, as an environmental NGO, that you sign up on this database because the industry is looking at it. And if you're not there, they don't have to communicate what the opportunity is, or their tier one doesn't. So please take advantage of it.
Amanda, did you know about that database already? Do you use that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we've only got 9 minutes more for this segment. Anybody want to answer questions? Go to the microphones, please. Keep moving. Go ahead, sir. Yes.
Good morning again, Tom. I really appreciate you assembling this. This is very valuable. As I said earlier, the lion's share of this work is manufactured and brought in from overseas. what we are having in the United States, based on my knowledge, based on my experience, and you're hearing it, by the way, from an expert, only the cosmetic part of this work is done in the United States. Now, I'd like you to ask a specific question from Ørsted and from Ecuador. Are you building the substation in the United States, or are you importing it? And Lion is here, Peter is here. Peter, I'm going to ask you a question. Maybe you don't have it now. I hate to put you on the spot. Do you have an analysis that what percentage of the work on offshore wind, what percentage of it is done in the United States, and one part of it is bought in and manufactured elsewhere? Maybe you don't have this statistic now, but I really appreciate if you dig it up and give it to me.
We're doing it now. We haven't done them yet. We haven't done the wind farms yet. We're doing them now. So we don't have it yet.
Yeah,
But I think that what you're saying is the goal. So, Siri, are you building the substations here or in elsewhere?
That's the specific question, Tom. Substations are built in the United States or elsewhere?
Okay, but we only have one small wind farm in the United States. It has 5 turbines. The United States is behind the curve. You can't expect us to have as many as Europe and other countries. That's what we're working towards. That's why we're here today.
Well, thank you for asking, and just responding the same thing. We are still early in this industry. We still only have 7 turbines in water. So we have not come to that stage yet. So I cannot respond for Ørsted, but this is not decided on. So these are early phase project developments.
And we'll ask Ørsted when they come up here in the next. We'll ask Ørsted when they come up in the next panel. Maddie, you want to ask a question? I mean, that's the goal of what we're trying to do, is to do this stuff in the United States. So that's why we're having this conference, to try and encourage this to happen. Maddie?
Good morning, Congressman. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity here. We had a spirited conversation last night, and it was about education. And what I want to start with was, I'm a member of the building trades. I have a 100-year heritage in energy efficiency, all union. The goal here is to go ahead and create union jobs. Now, I could tell you that at this opportunity, what happens is, I didn't start in this industry. I started somewhere else. And I want a show of hands here, which says, how many people are doing the job they thought they were going to do when they got out of high school? Well, that's not exactly true, Tom. Not exactly true, because I think you want to be president, but that's okay, too. So, you're getting there. I'll help you, too. So here's where this conversation comes in. As you've heard, some of the material that came in from the panel today was about driving people into the jobs. And the one thing I could tell you is, over time, guidance counselors have determined exactly where you should be going for education.
Yeah, this is true.
So what I'm looking to do is find out for education on where the building trades and where other people that sit on the panel have ideas to drive these people into the jobs. Because for me, although I understand a lot of it, I don't have all the answers, I don't pretend, and I do more listening than speaking. So thank you.
Well, I do more speaking than listening usually, but 60% of Americans do not graduate from college. And we have treated people who don't graduate from college terribly in our country for decades. And we need to start recognizing that not everybody's going to college, and not everybody wants to go to college, and not everybody should go to college. And we should be treating people who work in these jobs that we're talking about with the respect that they deserve, and encourage them. The guidance counselors, the teachers, society, politicians, everybody should be encouraging people to get the skills necessary so they can be successful in these industries. And that's not necessarily going to college in the process. So we need to encourage people to respect the dignity of work in different areas, and recognize that society works because of people with all different types of skill levels and educational backgrounds.
Can I chime in on that?
Yes, after Chris.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, Maddie, you know the building trades, the unionized labor organizations have been focused on recruitment for a long time. You heard President Liz Shuler from the AFL-CIO, one of her first initiatives when she went on as a Secretary-Treasurer was the AFL-CIO Next Up initiative, which is about reaching out to young workers, young people. And that translated across the United States with the IBEW. We have it's a program called Renew, and we've been reaching out in schools, career fairs, job fairs for years. And right now, the ground has never been so fertile for young people to be attracted to union jobs specifically. Congressman mentioned 1980. There's been a whole generation of Americans who have been convinced that you don't need to be in a union. There's been an anti-union movement by corporations since Ronald Reagan broke the air traffic controllers strike. And that's a generation of parents who now left the union movement, where you may have a grandparent who was in a union, your parent probably wasn't, and now you don't even know what unions do and what those benefits are. So as the union labor movement, we've been making that effort. We'll continue to make that effort. And now when we can tie it into the offshore wind opportunities with the Training Institute, the National Offshore Wind Training Center, with the academics here, with the schools, with the community groups, more important, unions and community groups have never been closer together in history. Right now, we're working with so many different organizations. It's not this battle anymore, and it's from national organizations to local community groups, where it's a full court press on making sure that people are having opportunities for these good paying jobs, and unions, you know, hopefully we've been able to dispel this notion about exclusivity, and you have to know somebody to get into a union, where we want to expand that opportunity to as many people that deserve it in communities affected by environmental and climate crisis, in communities of color. We want to expand those opportunities, and it's up to us as the labor movement to push that recruitment and get that information out there.
Excellent. And let me just say that, you know, one of the things that we're trying to push in the Labor Caucus in Washington is that everything we look at as Democrats with progressive policy, climate change, immigration, civil rights, whatever the issue is, we should be looking at it through the lens of labor. How are we going to change policy, but the net result will be we increase people's wages and we increase their benefits in the process. We still want everybody to win, but we got to make sure that people go to work every day, have a decent life in the process. Okay, Amanda, you're going to go. Maddie's going to say something. This guy wants to say something, but we want to start a second panel by 12 o'clock. So we're supposed to take a little break here. So let's make this efficient. It's now 11:46. We want to start the next panel at 12 o'clock. So, and that includes a little bit of a break. All right, Maddie, you can go first before Amanda. Go ahead,
sure.
Quickly.
I just want to make one comment. It's not even a question. You see, unions stick together, and the idea is that we want to make sure that everybody supports everybody. I teed that up for Chris, and he explained it exactly as it was supposed to be. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, Amanda?
I just want to add, and I'll be brief. Manufacturing has a perception problem in the U.S. There are tens of thousands of jobs in the Northeast alone that are unfilled because there's a perception of manufacturing that it's dark, dirty, and dangerous. And it's an ongoing problem, and it's something that I think it's incumbent upon us as an industry to be able to educate folks, but also I think policymakers as well. And whether it's through private-public partnerships where we can bring STEM centers into high schools and middle schools, but also change the way we're thinking about funding some of our schools. Because some public schools still get funding based on how many kids they send to college. We should be looking at and incentivizing how many kids are you putting into the workforce and are graduating and getting a good paying job pretty quickly after graduation.
I want to be a part of that conversation and help you with that as much as I possibly can. And I want to try and do it on Long Island. Everybody perceives Long Island as just being too expensive. But the reality is that if you make a decent wage and you're working in these industries and you can get the skills, you can make it here on Long Island and do well here. So we want to work with you to try and bring people here. That's why we were such an economic engine for the aerospace and defense industry. That's why there's so many skilled people that are still, we have this huge corridor of skilled people here on Long Island, whether it's the building trade unions or it's Brookhaven National Labs you heard about before, Stony Brook University, or here at CW Post, or Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories, or we have the skills here with all the stuff here, the 495 high-tech corridor. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just happened to notice this is the first question from the right today. But,
yes.
But anyway, my name's John Quinan. I'm an independent consultant in the supply chain space. And, you know, I have a foot in both sides of this issue. One on the labor and the social side. I've actually worked for companies and independent, looking at the audits of human rights, environmental, ESG issues, which is very important. Second, though, I've also been a chief sustainability officer for about 10 years, purchasing wind energy credits, renewable energy, and so forth. The point that I guess, and the question I want to get to is the trust that is coming with new partners and how to verify that, right? Because we've got a lot of different stakeholders here. People that are not in the same culture, you know, or even, different aspects and interests. I'm just curious for the panel, because I've actually done wage and audits for retailers here in New York and abroad. I'm just curious, before we actually have to get to enforcement, what are the mechanisms you guys are discussing to make sure that the trust gets built and gets verified, so we're not going to have these, you know, disputes, and we actually focus on the wind adoption as opposed to different conflicts? Can you speak to any of the supply chain codes of conduct mechanisms?
Or maybe the wage stuff.
So yeah, I understand your point. Yeah, there are different forces at play whenever you're kind of starting a new industry. For me, I think transparency builds trust. I mean, to that extent, for people to get together and kind of understand what the other side is where they're coming from and what their issues are. We do that in the wage and hour division. As an example of what the Labor Department does, we have a very robust outreach program where we get stakeholders from both sides of the aisle in a room, and we have some conversations about what the law requires. There's certainly some disagreement that can come from those conversations, but just beginning with an understanding of the other person's side is a good starting point, and we try to do that in the Department of Labor.
Yeah, a big part of this is, again, relationship building, so people can resolve these things, because the last thing you want is the wage and hour division showing up to do an audit or something like that. It's a bureaucracy, it's a nightmare, it's awful. So you want to have the people have the relationship so they can talk to each other and resolve those things before it becomes a dispute.
Just one quick comment. There's a large, you know, Nordic bank called Nordea. They do a lot of the financing, and same with U.S. banks. Part of their code of conduct is looking at who they finance to make sure that they follow basic environmental human rights as well. So there are mechanisms out there. And I'm happy to say that I'd much rather have a Norwegian or a Nordic company than some of the other companies that put a high importance on standard of living as well as other basic rights.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes,
we've done that in the wage and hour division, in the supply chains. I mean, not necessarily in wind, obviously, because you're a new industry. But particularly in the Davis-Bacon, where you have multiple levels of subcontractors, where we approach the prime contractor and say, look, we expect you to be in compliance, but we want an expectation that all your subcontractors are in compliance as well. So how do we do that? Well, let's get them in a room and let them understand what their requirements are. So then you have a whole supply chain that at least understands what it takes. And that's not just something that can be in wage hour, it can be in any regulation that you want.
All right, Chris is going to say something. We're going to wrap this up. We'll get you in the next panel, you two. Chris, you go ahead. We're going to wrap this up, and we're going to take a quick little break, and we're going to start right at 12 o'clock.
I feel like this one was kind of teed up for me also, but my answer is always going to be a union contract. A project labor agreement, a signatory contract between a union employer and a labor organization that guarantees the conditions. You're going to get a skilled workforce. The safety is going to be there. There's a history of training, a motivated workforce that understands we need to do well on this job, because that means my employer is going to get the next job, and they're going to get the next job. And that's not just the IBW, that's every building trades local that's involved with this. That's with manufacturing companies that may have union contracts, but that's a guarantee. Unions aren't just looking for the handout for the work. We know we have to earn it, and we have a history of being able to do that with the training and the talent that we bring.
Okay. Let's thank our panelists, and let's take a 5-minute break, and the next panel come on up here. Okay, we're doing our Second panel. And everybody's going to stop talking. Hey, guys. We don't have much diversity on this panel, though, unfortunately. So, entering the wind energy supply chain in New York is the topic of this panel. Entering the wind energy supply channel in New York. Okay, we have the deputy head of procurement, so it's a perfect person, for Ørsted. Now, Ørsted was one of the most coal-intensive power generators in Europe while expanding oil and gas production business, but pivoted to green energy, particularly offshore wind. They're now one of the largest renewable energy companies globally and leading offshore wind companies in the world. And the company has a goal of net zero generation by 2025 and no carbon emissions by 2040. And they built the first offshore wind farm in the world in 1991 and the largest offshore wind farm in 2018. They have 27 offshore wind farms in operation, 2 under construction. They own and operate Block Island Wind, America's first offshore wind farm, and have 4,000 megawatts, which is not a big number. I'm sorry, they have over 4,000 megawatts of awarded capacity through 6 projects on the East Coast, 2 of which are out on the east end of Long Island. So the representative from Ørsted here today, the deputy, the deputy head of procurement is Grant Van Weingarten. Let's give Grant a big round of applause. He's a very smart guy. Okay, next we have Ross Gould, who is from the Business Network for Offshore Wind. And Ross is trying to work to make sure that we get people working together on these industries. The Business Network for Offshore Wind is a nonprofit educational organization with a mission to develop the offshore wind renewable energy industry and its supply chain. So he can give us a lot of advice today as to what we need to do to make sure that we get the big guys like Ørsted and Ecuador, who was here before, to work together with, still here, to work together to get the small guys to work together to put the businesses together. So let's give a big welcome to Ross Gould. Okay, next we have a gentleman from Tpi Composites. Now, Tpi Composites is a global independent manufacturer of composite wind blades for the onshore and offshore wind market. The company is headquartered in Arizona and operates factories in the United States, China, Mexico, Turkey, and India. TPI has worked with a number of major players in the industry and has a specific area of insight into the future of wind manufacturing. These are the guys that Sam was asking about before. We want to try and get them to do something right here in New York and in the United States. And we have with us today the Senior Director of Innovation and Technology and the Principal Engineer at TPI Composites in Warren, Rhode Island. Let's give a big round of applause to Steve Nolette. Steve's a really good example of where the rubber hits the road for what we're trying to accomplish here, and how can we try and persuade them that doing business right here on Long Island is the way to go. Next, we have Tom Montalbane. How do I say your last name, Tom?
Montalbane.
Montalbane from Roman Stone. And he is the president of Roman Stone Construction since 2002, the past president of Precast Concrete Association of New York, and also involved in Sailing Association Board of Governors out in Sayville. And Roman Stone Construction is in Bayshore, and it's a strategic location for serving the entire region. And he has 30,000 square foot manufacturing facility on 9 acres, providing a full line of precast and cast iron products for electrical and mechanical construction industry. And so we want to figure out, and he wants to figure out, how he's going to get into this supply chain so that he can be supplying the products that are necessary to do this business. So this is a very interesting panel. This is really nuts and bolts. How are we going to get the business here on Long Island and New York from this growing industry? So with that, I'm going to ask, go down the road. Grant, you're going to go first. Let's give all of our panelists a big thank you.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you, Long Island, for hosting us today and your great hospitality since this industry started as just a whisper. I represent Ørsted. We have 2 projects interconnecting on Long Island. One of those is in my backyard in Suffolk County, and we're delighted to be welcomed here today. For decades, we've heard the story of jobs being outsourced or offshored to overseas. But Siri and I are in a very exciting time in this industry where we're able to progress the opposite situation, which is onshoring or insourcing those jobs. The offshore wind industry is in its infancy in the United States with 7 turbines spinning offshore today, but there's plans for hundreds more. And the jobs that exist overseas in Europe and in Asia for this industry, there's great opportunities for those jobs to be coming to the United States. I congratulate Equinor on the establishment and plans for the very first major turbine component manufacturing facility planned for the Port of Albany, where Marmon Welcon will be fabricating towers for the turbines. And there'll be hundreds of jobs at that facility. Ørsted is working on something similar in New Jersey, where monopiles will be fabricated by EEW. And today, that facility is being constructed. Steel has been erected for those buildings, and that steel is coming from across the country. We have vessels already under contract and being built in the south from steel and other components being supplied from around the country. And this is just the start. We have a lot of momentum, and with projects coming online in 2023, 2024, and beyond, there's a lot more to come. So thank you very much for having me today.
Okay, thanks very much. Let's give a big thank you. This is one of the very important players here. We got to figure out how we can get you to do the stuff right here on Long Island. That's our goal. Okay, Ross?
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for your leadership on offshore wind and for helping to build a local supply chain here in New York on Long Island. Hi, it's great to see all of you all. As many of you know, I was born here on Long Island. I am a New Yorker, and it's great to be back in a room with so many friends and see you all here today. My name is Ross Gould, Vice President for Supply Chain Development for the Business Network for Offshore Wind. For the last 10 years, I've been working with many of you here in this room to help share and educate people about the opportunities on offshore wind, the jobs, and the supply chain. I've been working with businesses, labor unions, environmental groups, and academic institutions on issues surrounding policy and supply chain. In my role, I oversee the network's evolution and expansion of the supply chain. And what that means is I go out and I meet with businesses and I talk to them, and I talk to members of the workforce and tell them about the jobs and help them figure out where they fit into the supply chain. The network is a 501c3 with a mission to advance the development of the offshore wind renewable energy and its supply chain. And we do that through 3 things: education, innovation, and collaboration of public and private stakeholders. The network is a membership organization with over 400 members. And you hear me saying the business network for offshore wind, but we are not only businesses. The AFL-CIO is a member. Long Island Federation of Labor is a member. So we have labor unions. IBEW is a member as well. The ironworkers and other trades as well. As well as we have academic institutions as part of our membership. The network tracks the commercial activity and the policies that impact offshore wind 24/7, 365 days a year, and we keep that in our market dashboard. It's a tool that we make available to help people understand what's happening in the offshore wind space. We also have other tools. We host regular industry educational events. We host our annual International Partnering Forum, which brings together businesses, original equipment manufacturers, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3s, in order to get together and have conversations about how they can work together. We also are in the process of doing a supply chain roadmap. We're taking a look at what the domestic capabilities are, the domestic manufacturing capabilities are in the United States in order to supply 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. We're taking a look at what's currently in our supply, what manufacturing currently exists, and looking up and down the supply chain to see how the domestic manufacturers can fit into that supply chain here. That is a Department of Energy funded grant, and that's also funded through the National Offshore Wind Research and Development Consortium. And also, just I want to share with you all, in order to help us with that work, take a look at our Supply Chain Connect registry, and please register your business through there. That way we can include you in our analysis and take a look at your business and see where you fit into the offshore wind supply chain. I'm going to leave it at that and say, listen, again, thank you, Congressman, for having us. I look forward to this conversation and to your questions.
Thank you, Ross. Thanks very much. Okay, now Steve Nolet from Tpi Composites. Steve, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Nolet. I'm Senior Director of Innovation Technology at Tpi Composites. We build wind turbine blades, and as such, that's kind of the front end of the machine and the most visible component, and probably one of the more massive components up tower. We've been doing this business now for 20 years, and I've been excited to watch it grow and our industry grow. What hasn't grown as fast, of course, is offshore wind, right? And there was a very uncomfortable question asked earlier. I think I'd like to address it a little bit more up front. Question is, are the turbines that are being built going to be made in the U.S. of America? And the answer to that question is it depends, right? It depends on how quickly we can create the critical mass for an industry that will draw the investment necessary to make those U.S. built. That's what we're here for to do, and the Congressman answered that quite succinctly in that manner. But we face headwinds, and those headwinds are what slow down our industry. I come from not Long Island, I apologize. Where I come from, somebody like me is called from away. I'm from away when it comes to Long Island. I live in the great state of Maine. And we have stakeholders in the wind industry business, and we have those that create the headwinds. We're not as different as we may seem. In fact, I think our interests are well aligned. We're just misinformed at times. Wind energy brings clean, renewable, carbonless energy to the United States and to our economy. And the fishermen and the environmentalists that create some headwinds for us at times and believe that will adversely impact their livelihood, I'd like to say may be misguided. We need to provide that information and provide evidence that not only are there fishing stocks being regulated because of rising ocean temperatures, we're here to solve that. We're here to strengthen their businesses, not attack them. And so I welcome the opportunity to be part of this forum where we can bring all these different stakeholders together and look for ways in which we can expand this business, which will bring jobs to the great state of New York and Long Island. But we've got to do that by getting everybody rowing together and eliminate those headwinds and create the environment in which we are where our investments are well protected and the guarantees are there. We can't build a $50, $60, $80 million factory in the hopes that we're going to be able to meet our capacity for that investment. But if the business is here, we will build it. If the industry is here, they will come. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you for the organization. Great job in organizing this.
Tom Montalbani.
Thank you, Congressman. I represent Roman Stone Construction Company. We are a small precast concrete manufacturer located in Bayshore in Suffolk County. The company was started by 5 immigrant brothers who came over from Italy and passed through Ellis Island. And my grandfather was one of those brothers. Originally, the plant was located in Brooklyn, and we moved out to Suffolk County in 1962. We have 60 employees who live and work in Suffolk County, and we're looking to get a piece of this. We specialize in manufacturing concrete products for infrastructure, and with the billions of dollars that are being spent, we would like to get a little piece of that work.
Very good. And what you're saying, Tom, is what we want to try and promote more people to say. How can we get a little piece of this work? And some big pieces too. So first I want to ask, somebody explain, we keep on hearing, somebody said 16 tiers before, tier 1 we've heard before. What's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3? Does anybody know what that is? Grant? He's a procurement guy. Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
My definition of the tier structure of suppliers might be a little bit too simplified, but basically it really comes down to who's your customer. If your customer is the developer, Ørsted, Equinor, or others, then you're a tier 1. If your customer is a tier 1, then you're a tier 2. If your customer is a tier 2, then you're a tier 3.
So who are the customers of the developer? What kind of stuff does the developer buy?
So the developer buys turbines from the 3 major turbine OEMs. We buy foundations, which generally are monopiles or other structures. Then we buy substations and cables. Those are the majority of the components.
Can any of those 3 components be made in the United States, or are any of them made in the United States now?
Yes. So first with the turbines, of the 3 major components, as I mentioned, the towers, there's a plan for an offshore wind tower factory in upstate New York. Foundations, we're working with EEW to fabricate monopiles foundations in Paulsboro, New Jersey. Cables, Nexans can produce export cables from their facility in South Carolina. Interesting fact, they have already signed the very first export contract for offshore wind, where they're going to be exporting export cable from that facility to a project in Scotland. And as Sam asked the question for offshore substations, a few weeks ago, Ørsted and Eversource announced the contract with Kiewit for the offshore substation to be fabricated just outside of Corpus Christi for our South Fork wind farm.
And so the tier 2 people, what kind of stuff are they selling?
So tier 2s, it depends, of course, on the equipment itself. If you look at the foundations that will be made in Paulsboro, New Jersey, tier 2 supplier would be the steel plates. Similarly, for the towers, if you're also adding coatings and selling directly to those structure fabricators, those would all be tier 2s. For the nacelles, when nacelle assembly starts to happen in the U.S., Ørsted and GE have announced a plan for a nacelle assembly facility in New Jersey, where a lot of the internal components, whether those are generators, converters, transformers, you're selling those to GE to be assembled in the nacelle, then you would be considered a tier 2 supplier.
Now we have a coatings guy here. He's got a bunch of coating materials, but we also have a guy on Long Island called High Temco, which does coatings for everything that goes into space. It's like really sophisticated space, and they ship him component parts from all over the world to coat here on Long Island. I'm sure that there must be, because of the ocean and the seawater and everything else, you have to have very sophisticated coating products.
It's incredibly sophisticated, the amount of coating technology that goes into offshore wind farms. These are pieces of equipment that have to withstand some of the harshest conditions for 30, 35 years. Actually, we led an innovation challenge out of our innovation hub in Rhode Island a few months ago or earlier this year, specifically on addressing coatings, where we invited innovative coating technology providers on how to solve some of the challenges we in the industry face with this specific
You should look
entity.
up this High Temco company, or I should try and put them in touch with you, because they're a big, sophisticated coating company, and Jack Prince over here I know does coatings as well.
I'd appreciate
And what
that.
about tier 3? What do they do?
Tier 3 just comes down further down the supply chain. So we mentioned some of the components that go into the nacelle. So if you're a generator, for example, if you're selling magnets to a generator maker, then you're a tier 3 for those magnets. So it's all the subcomponents.
So now Tom Montalbane is a small precast concrete manufacturer. Is there any role for that type of thing in this industry?
100%. So precast concrete, there's a few applications. The first, which Roman Stone is already in the business of, which would be junction boxes, whether that's for onshore cable laying and landing, or on the landing sites where the cables come onshore, there's junction boxes there, where I'm sure Tom can talk about some of the projects that he's supplied to, not for offshore wind, but other applications. Offshore wind has those same applications, so there's a need there. Additionally, we have what we call concrete mattresses or other equipment to secure cables on the sea floor, and that's an application for precast concrete as well.
Grant, I'm really happy we invited you.
I'm happy you invited me as well, too.
Okay, Steve, you guys manufacture these big things. Yeah. You're out in Arizona, you're in other countries all over the world. You're up in Maine. You know, is there any part of what you do that we could figure out how to do here on Long Island or in New York?
The answer to that question is yes. I'd start, Congressman, by commenting that our easiest and most likely initial play would be in services, right, in providing blade services for up tower. These machines require a high level of reliability. No owner-operator wants to be not producing revenue for an extended period of time, and deployment requires great speed and great proximity to those machines. And so I would imagine in the services industry we'll employ dozens of individuals that will be highly skilled in the repair of the wind turbine blades themselves. So that's a good starting point. And with that comes all of the requisite skills related to fiberglass work, to coatings applications, to process technologies that the skills are being developed right here on Long Island as we speak, with the CPC, for instance, the Composite Prototyping Center, that's going through its own transformation. And then in longer term, as I said, when the industry is as the industry matures and the business can be guaranteed and our customers can provide us with the supply agreements. We're a tier 2, by the way, just to make that clear. We build blades for Vestas MHI. We build blades for GE Siemens Gamesa. And so as such, that makes us a tier 2. We build those not on speculation. We don't keep a stockyard of blades ready to go out the door. We do that under supply agreements. Those supply agreements are in place, and the location is agreed upon. Will be in wherever that is necessary.
What are the blades made of?
The blades are made of predominantly fiberglass reinforcements, resin systems, and by the way, again, resin systems come from petrochemicals. Petrochemicals come out of the ground, but we sequester that carbon. We don't burn it and light it on fire. So we can ally with the petrochemical industry. They contain core materials. They contain carbon fiber. They contain coatings. They contain lightning protection systems, which are primarily wire and cable and fittings that are machined. So all of these bits and pieces that we talked about, bearings and gearboxes, gears and lubricants and seals and gaskets, those are all required to support this industry. And Long Island has a long history of producing those materials.
And where is all this stuff assembled? Is it assembled out in the water, or is it assembled on shore?
It's primarily assembled as components that are then brought to the water and erected, depending on the technology used, floating platforms versus monopiles. But
now these monopiles and the blades are humongous.
Yes,
They're gigantic.
They are. Yes, they are.
So where will those be built, and how will you get them here?
Usually they're built. They need to be built because they're so large. Today, the smallest blades today are about 107 meters in length, making the rotor diameter the size of 2.5 football fields.
So
Put
where
that in perspective,
where would these? How many blades will be made for the 5 Long Island projects we're talking about now?
Without knowing exact details of the number of machines, there are 3 blades per machine. And if they're 12 megawatt machines, we can go ahead and do the math based on the
Do you know how many towers there are? About how many? Anybody know? Is it that many? Who's saying that?
That's right.
Go to the microphone, please.
Yeah, 13 megawatt machines, 12 megawatt machines, depending on the class
Right.
win.
So I'm Marty Support from Farmingdale State College. We are kind of ahead of curve on training on Long Island, Congressman. And I want to thank you. I have 6 of our students that were trained by GE here with us.
Where are the
Today,
students? Raise your hand, students.
Students, raise your
Okay,
hand.
good job. Very good, students.
So my great thank you to whoever put this together, all the people involved. So the turbines has to do with what size turbines. So Halifax turbines, which are kind of the largest one, and I'm not sure, my question to the gentleman would be, for those turbines, are we building the blades here, or are we bringing them from France? That I'm not sure. But depending on the size of turbines, we could be talking about somewhere between 20 to 120 turbines.
Oh, someone said 700 before.
Just to give an example.
700 would be an onshore. On an offshore, these turbines are much larger,
Okay. So let me ask you this question.
Just real quick, the first utility scale project is moving towards construction off the coast of Massachusetts. The Vineyard Wind project has 74 turbines.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Steve.
Yep.
You said before, in order to make an $80 million investment in a plant, we have to have enough work to do that it's worth making that investment.
That is correct.
How many turbines do you need to have work for in order to make an $80 million plant?
I would venture to guess that 9 gigawatts would be more than enough and would make a company like TPI very excited if we gain that supply agreement.
All right, so you agree that you will build it on Long Island, and we'll get you the contract.
If I could make those decisions, Congressman, I would be in a much different position. But that is indeed exactly what we're talking about. Those are the kinds of guarantees that will bring the work to the Northeast.
Well, let's get Ørsted and Equinor teaming up with each other, and let's figure out how we can get a low-price wind turbine built here on Long Island that makes it profitable for them.
Because of the question and about training, I think it's worth understanding, of course, the economics at play, right? And it's extremely important that we all understand, again, that it's not simply volume, it's levelized cost of energy. That's what drives our business today. Everything I do in my role as a technology guy is to find ways to make labor more productive, to give them the tools to lay down and build more product for less unit of labor cost.
Yeah.
And so we drive technology, and we will build those types of components at the location that makes the most sense to minimize levelized cost of energy. So through workforce development, through training, with a skilled workforce that is highly productive, that will enable us to make those investments.
What kind of skills do people who build these need?
Everything from machining skills, machinist skills, to process skills, to handling resins and safety. Obviously, safety is number one. Understanding the responsibility to keep yourself and your coworkers safe. Number two is quality, and learning the systems required to build quality. And these are just skills that are developed through on-the-job training, through apprenticeships. And that's why I think we can work in a very collaborative manner to create that environment that will make those skills available to minimize levelized cost of energy and compete with anybody on Earth.
Okay, Tom, you heard Grant talk about the type of precast concrete he could use, some of the smaller things as opposed to the monopile. Do you know about those things? Did that resonate with you?
Yeah, pretty early on we identified certain products that we'd be able to manufacture on Long Island. I must admit, though, to date we haven't received any contracts or done anything as far as moving forward with that. I do admit, though, that Grant has been my greatest source of inspiration. He's kept me going, kept at it, been talking me through my highs and lows of trying to get involved in the supply chain. But to date, nothing.
Well, we haven't built anything yet, so I mean, we have to be ready for it. Okay, Ross, is there anything that you've heard from these three folks that you think is encouraging, or anything that you're discouraged about, or anything that you think like, oh, you're crazy, Suozzi, we'll never be able to do that here, we should be doing this instead?
Well, I'm encouraged, but at the same time, I'm a little discouraged to hear, from my conversations I had with Tom a little bit over the years, because one of the things that a lot of people sometimes don't realize is it's a long process to get in as a supplier. And so you need to spend 2 years going through a process, and you heard Amanda mention it a little earlier about a certification process. So you have to get pre-qualified as a supplier before you're able to do that, which means you need to have your site inspected, you have to get ISO certifications, you have to train your workers. So it's a several-year process to make sure that you're able to be the supplier. And so because of the nature of our industry being one that is just starting, that several-year process, people may think, oh, that several-year process is far off. I don't have to do anything now, but that's wrong. If projects are moving to construction in 2023, 2024, you need to be certified now to be a supplier. So,
okay, very good. This gentleman's been dying to ask a question. Is that Shapiro?
Yes.
Oh, from Liberty. Oh, this is good.
Hi.
He's a chef.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, firstly, thank you, Congressman Suozzi. This is absolutely fabulous. I felt it was my duty to just state that I think there's one area that we're all not talking about that I want to make sure is also represented here on Long Island and in the offshore wind supply chain, and that is water. This is offshore. So you can't play ice hockey without knowing how to ice skate, right? I'm with Liberty Green Logistics, supply chain management for the offshore wind industry. We have companies like Liberty Maritime and Liberty Global Logistics working in the U.S. maritime labor space, U.S. maritime industry, performing supply chain services in the offshore wind industry. And I know we work very closely with SUNY Maritime, who is here. I know we're working with various parties for both the training side, but also building mariners. So we need mariners in this supply chain that have...
Kings Point Merchant Marine Academy.
Yes, as
Also,
well as
your
SUNY
friends.
Maritime, Mass Maritime, other academies building mariners that can man the vessels.
Seafarers Union.
And have the qualifications that we need. And so this is a partnership, obviously, between maritime labor and transportation shipping companies like Liberty that are out here doing this. So I just wanted to make sure I made a mention of it. I know, Grant, at Orsted, you give a great explanation of the tiers of supply chain within the component parts. There's also a whole tiers of supply chain components in terms of supply chain logistics, and that's what we do every day. We are based right here in Long Island in Lake Success for the last 30 years. Thank you.
Very good. Get you a spot on the water in Glen Cove.
Yeah, Congressman, each project could have upwards of 100 vessels involved in their construction and operations phase, all across all phases, from permitting and siting through construction and installation and operation and maintenance.
Very good. Okay, you wanted to ask a question.
So yes, I have a question. Congressman, this is for you. It's all the little parts
Oh,
that are...
that's good.
And one of my students gave
I've
it to
wanted
me.
that for a long time.
Tier 3. So we can describe this. By the way, IBEW and mill rights guys, you could read these. But I'm here for a question for Grant, and that's because my training program, the technical training program, and the one that we collaborated with GE on, is specifically for offshore operation and maintenance technicians. And I do know that you're gearing up to hire. I've heard numbers Jennifer mentioned as early as this fall. So my students got job offers with GE which are not on Long Island. They have been told, at least these are the plans, that for offshore wind, most manufacturers like to hire people who've had experience on onshore wind. However, Ørsted seems to have a contract with Siemens Gamesa that you are hiring the O&M guys yourself, and you're not, manufacturer is not hiring them. You know, in other words, it's not they're not going to be Siemens Gamesa's employees, they'll be Ørsted employees. So on behalf of my students here, I would like to know, when does that hiring start? Do you have a start date for that? And do you have a number in mind for just the, you know, South Shore project?
Hi, Marge. Thanks for the question. So in terms of the first part of the question of who's hiring the wind turbine technicians, it depends on the agreement between the developer and the turbine OEM. There's a SWA, or a service agreement, as to who's responsible for the O&M in the initial phase. For our projects in New York, our turbine OEM, as you know, is Siemens Gamesa, and jointly with them there will be turbine technicians. I do know from our O&M planning team that we have plans to hire offshore wind technicians, up to 100 that will be based on Long Island. We've already acquired the facility that I'm sure you're familiar with in Suffolk County near Port Jeff. That will be the office space for a lot of those technicians, and they'll be boarding the service operation vessel in Port Jefferson. In terms of timing, the first project, South Fork, which is a 10-turbine project that will be operational in 2023, we still have a little bit of time before we'll be hiring turbine technicians for that project. And then with Sunrise, which is coming on a little bit later, 2024, 2025, the hiring of large numbers of turbine technicians will follow that. I would say in terms of timing, the very first commercial scale project is going to be the Vineyard project that Ross mentioned, and that's, my understanding, is a GE turbine has been selected for that. So GE technicians in the U.S. would be needed first in terms of scale, And then following that would be our South Fork, Revolution, Sunrise, and Ocean Wind projects, which are a mix of GE and Siemens Gamesa, where we would be involved in hiring O&M
In
technicians.
2023 or 2022?
I would say for South Fork, for sure, 2022. For Sunrise, 2023 is a better time frame.
All right, you guys talk some more after this about this.
What about Ecuador later on, if they could tell us when their hiring plans are too? It would be
Do you know that kind of thing? So you guys hook up with each other right after this, and you're talking next week. Okay. Yes, Miss.
Hi, Congressman. How are you?
Good.
Hey, everyone. I'm Catherine Fee. I'm the Director of Business Development of the Nassau County Industrial Development Agency. For those of you who are not familiar with what IDAs are, our mission is to retain businesses to Nassau and to help businesses currently in Nassau to expand. We have been in touch with many manufacturers and distributors, letting them know of what's going on with offshore wind, and they're all very responsive. They're interested, those especially that make small parts, they want to join the supply chain. From this point forward, we've just been telling them to join NYSERDA's approved list. We've worked with Ross in the past, thank you, Ross, to share NASIX codes. But what else can we share with them in terms of tier lists, or I think Marge might have a list that I want to get my hands on for tier 3. What else can we share with them to help them understand, and where should they, other lists should they be on in order to be in the game and
Congressman,
have an
could I'd make one comment that the APQP for wind, the quality standard that's being developed, it would be one place to start to understand the rules, regulations,
What
standards
does AQPQ
for quality.
stand for? AQ stand?
American Quality, Association of Quality Planning. I'll get you the rest of it.
Okay.
But APQP4wind.org.
Okay.
And start there, and that's a great place.
But then what list should they go on? She wants to know, she has these manufacturers.
Understood, but that's going to be one of the first things that will be asked in terms of certification of your organization for supplying the large OEMs. And I'll help with more in terms of business networking, but that's one area in which I think all of the suppliers would be helpful.
Yeah, I think I could probably help with a little bit of the business networking side. So we have our Supply Chain Connect registry, which is a national database where that has over 2,000 companies, organizations, academic universities, labor unions, and others listed. They could sign up there. It's free. And companies such as Ørsted, Vestas, and others regularly ask us questions about who's on that list and ask us questions about where they're located and who's there. And we supply them with information of the
So
contacts on
everybody
that
should
list.
sign up for the Business Network for Offshore Wind. List.
Supply Chain Connect registry.
Supply chain. So that and the NYSERDA one, and what else?
And then the other thing to do is to reach out, to find on the Vestas' website, Siemens Gamesa, and GE's websites. They have preferred supplier lists. You can sign up through those websites to start the process of becoming a preferred supplier.
Now, Grant, you only speak to the tier 1 people typically, right? You don't talk to the tier 2s and tier 3s?
No, that's not true.
Okay.
I talked to the tier 2, tier 3s. I've spoken to Tom before and many of the other potential tier 2s and 3s in the room today.
How can we get people that are potential tier 2s and 3s into your mind?
Yeah, so the first thing is the NYSERDA database for New York companies for sure is number one.
You look at that.
Actually, one of my team members today told me that there's 583 unique New York companies registered in that list. Our procurement team, we scour that list and use that to identify who companies that we want to work with, either as prospective tier 1s or when we're contracting with our tier 1s. Most of them, or a lot of them, are European or foreign companies. We're encouraging them and almost forcing them to be engaged with those New York and local companies, and that New York database is the first one that we point to them, and then we help them connect the dots with those local
Now,
companies.
do you ever look at the Business Network for Offshore Wind list that they have?
Yeah, absolutely. Supply Chain Direct or Connect is a list that we've been using. Additionally, this is a slightly off topic, but I'd like to make a plug for the Business Network for Offshore Wind training program called Foundation to Blade. There's a program running right now every Fridays, and actually one of our team members is participating in that session. It's an incredible opportunity for local businesses to learn about the industry and how they can get involved.
So let me ask a question of Roger Clayman, if I can. So our building trades have training programs here on Long Island. Maybe I should ask Matty this question. But then there's also training that we're here is being done by Business Network. There's training done by SUNY Farmingdale. There's training done at the SUNY Maritime. Are these groups all competing with each other? Or are they working together? How does that work? Can he be heard on the online, do we know? Or does he have to use a microphone? Try and use the microphone. Maddie, let Maddie go. You want to say something to Maddie or not? Yeah.
While they're joining the microphone, I just want to tell you, Congressman, that I've got IBEW, Maddie, and Millworks people all on my advisory board for the program. And the goal is that we could, once we've Offshore Wind Training Institute orders a skill gap study from all major stakeholders, including mariners. The plan is to help with their own internal training so that we can train for the gap in the skills. Because the organized labor trains great, workers, obviously, with 5 years of apprenticeship. But we are looking to see what the skill gaps are so we can help facilitate that. For example, IBEW, along with the cable company that Ørsted's hiring, we need to know what do they need from the electrical workers. So
okay, we need to bring in the seafarers and the machinists as well. Sam, let these guys finish what they were doing. Sam, let them go ahead of you, please. Roger and Matt. Let them go ahead of you, please. Go ahead, Roger.
Just to repeat what I said, there are different levels of training. For construction, it's building trades because of project labor agreements. For O&M, there are no pre-hire agreements, so it's a workforce that may come from different areas. We hope to work with the developers to recruit that workforce. For businesses, there's training they need for themselves, than the business network, how to get into the supply chain, how to get their logistics down. They should be all talking to Ross and figuring that out and getting on these websites.
Very good. Maddie, building trades?
So we're working in unison with the Long Island Fed and Suffolk Community College. And one of the things you'll find is when you hear about Stony Brook and you hear about Farmingdale, all three are training programs, but on the other hand, the National Offshore and Training Center is the only brick and mortar, which is when you go through the training, you'll actually have a job. So that's where the one component is. And we'd like to go ahead and help that whole scenario where it drives people to the manufacturing as well. As you know, there was a training program that actually took place up in, I believe it was the Binghamton area, where it was probably for a few weeks. And in fact, they were supposed to travel to Europe. I don't know if they did. And that was for the turbines themselves. We are, in the building trades, interested in the application of construction and maintenance, and that's where the focus for us is. I could tell you that we want to use the pre-apprentice programs and the apprentice programs, which are mandated by the NYSERDA programs, on a road for the middle class. So we have a successful model that works, and that's why we want to utilize that. So.
Very good. Okay, Sam, and then we're going to start wrapping it up. So is anybody else going to want to ask any questions? Okay, get up on the microphone if you're going to be asking questions so we're ready for you. Sam, go ahead. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3. And then you guys, if you have any closing comments.
My question is from Grant. On Long Island and on Jersey Shore, are you building the units on monopile or jackets? And if you are building those, I'd like to know the proportion. And are you importing them or are you manufacturing them in the United States?
For our U.S. projects, we've committed to monopile foundations for all of our turbine positions. We're working with EEW and their factory in Paulsboro, New Jersey, to manufacture monopiles there. In terms of the specifications, I can talk to you offline with some of those details.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, and Congressman, thank you so much for this conference. I see that there, and I'm Anna Fusak, I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Equinor for Long Island. One thing that's kind of being lost is that, you know, there are manufactured components, but there are also services, cleanup, infrastructure services. And I think one of the things to keep in mind that those businesses also should be in these registries. So encourage the service providers to also register. So just wanted, because I think that kind of got lost in the conversation today. Just wanted to stress that.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. Yes.
Congressman Suozzi, thank you for organizing this. After the Giants lost last night, this is really boosting my spirits.
Okay.
I'm a supply chain manager for EnBW North America, competing with Ørsted and Equinor for building up some projects as a developer. And I've been in the sector now for about 6 years, previously worked over in Europe, and now helping to build up the supplier network here in the US. And one of the best events I had attended was about 3 years ago that NYSERDA organized a supplier matchmaking event. And a lot of what we're talking about right now is the registration on databases. B&L has one, Ørsted has one, NYSERDA has one, I have one. And I'm sure what a lot of people want to know is what comes after that? What is the next step that actually gets to that networking that we're seeing here between Roman Stone and Ørsted? We had that event back when contracts weren't signed. Now we have Kiewit going contract to assemble a topside for substations. Where is the event going to happen that links suppliers with the lower levels of the supply chain, so that we can have a quote matchmaking event to actually build those connections?
So NYSERDA did that last time?
I think it was in 2018, 2019.
Is NYSERDA still here or not? Yeah. Do you know about that conference that they did before? Let's try and do it again. We'll do it with you. Let's get the 500 people on your database and invite them and invite all the big shots. And
We actually have a New York women-owned business working for us for our project in Maryland today, and they were identified by our Tier 1 through registration of that database. So it works, and there's companies that are working today.
Okay. Last question, then you guys are going to close it up.
Thank you, everyone, for the great conference. Just as a number of units that have to be built, 9 gigawatts is approximately 900 units. Each 10 megawatt wind turbine is about 850 feet tall. As a perspective, there's only 25 buildings in New York City that are taller than 850 feet. So it's a huge project. I support it, but it's definitely, to consider the magnitude of it, it's huge. 9 gigawatts is like 9 Shore nuclear power plants. So I just want everyone to consider it's a long-term, big project, big money, and somewhere along the line someone has to pay for it. Consumers, electric users. I just hope it doesn't hurt the rest of the economy because it's such a big bite to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for the pick-me-up there. You guys want to say anything to close it out? You go first, Tom Montalbani.
I agree with...
Speaking to the microphone.
I agree with that last speaker that there definitely needs to be some kind of connection made between the Tiers 1 down to people like small manufacturers.
Steve?
I want to thank you very much, Congressman, for hosting this. This is such a critical part of getting the offshore industry moving. To end up a little bit on an upper, look at the levelized cost of energy, of what consumers are paying for power generated by wind. Power purchase agreements are our best friend and guarantee low rates. So we will pay for it through the electric utilities that will serve us and the owner-operators that make those purchase power agreements and build an electrical system that we can rely on, is carbon-free, and doesn't and actually saves consumers money.
Very good. Ross?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, Congressman. Appreciate it. Just real quick on the pay for issue first, to plug Adrian here, we're going to pay for it with climate change if we don't do anything. Secondly, we're also going to pay for it in our in minority and low-income communities that are bearing the burden of pollution, a disproportionate burden of pollution, so we'll be paying for it there as well. But back to the supply chain piece, the Business Network has noted that there's over 573 contracts that have been signed in the U.S. offshore wind industry. Of that, 60% are U.S.-based companies. Those are U.S.-based companies. Granted, that's mainly in the permitting and siting phase of the industry, but as we move to construction and operations, we see a pathway for increased operation. And one last point I'd like to make is that companies in the U.S. are already supplying the offshore wind supply chain. There's companies supplying lighting fixtures and other parts and pieces. There are 8,000 components in an offshore wind turbine, and they're not all the size of a football field. There are gears and bearings and wires and cables and lions and tigers and bears, oh my. So we can do this here. Long Island has a great aerospace, defense, and they can transition, and there are adjacent industries that transition very well into the industry. So thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just quickly in closing, thank you so much for supporting the offshore wind industry. This is an incredible time for all of us. We are bringing thousands of family-supporting jobs to the U.S., to New York, and to Long Island. The momentum that we've long been waiting for is coming now, and the opportunities are going to be here. I love the reference to ice hockey. For those suppliers and businesses on Long Island that are interested in getting into this industry, my advice is skate to where the puck is going to be. Know your customer, understand where your service or manufactured component is going to fit within the supply chain, and continue to come to these events and speak to your customer and get involved. Thanks for having us.
Let's hear it for all of our panelists from both panels today. A couple things. Wind energy is not just offshore, it's onshore. For us here in this region, it's offshore that we're talking about. Solar energy is going to keep on coming on. Geothermal energy is going to keep on coming on. I think that nuclear power should and will be continue to come on. Not in this area necessarily, but it's got to be in other areas. But because you can't do it in densely located areas. So, but there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle to try and eliminate our carbon footprint or dramatically reduce our carbon footprint. It's coming. We have to do it. There's no question. We should have done it 30 years ago. We have to be doing it now. It's becoming more and more real every day. We need to skate to where the puck is going, and we want to be a part of that, and we want to continue to try and make sure that this will be a win for the environment, a win for business, and a win for labor. Working together, it won't just happen on its own. Some parts of it will happen on its own, but it won't happen on its own. Everybody's got to be on the team, working together, doing the hard work to make these connections a reality. But I'm excited that we can do this and that it's going to happen, and we need to make sure that we're communicating with each other and building relationships with each other so that we know. This gentleman before was talking about trust. Trust comes from relationships. Trust comes from experiences. It doesn't just happen because you say, oh, you can trust me. We've got to just keep on working on building these networks so that different players can be part of what will be a very positive thing for a lot of different components of our society. I want to thank LIU for hosting us here today. Let's give LIU a round of applause. Where's Kim Klein? Is Kim Klein here? Someone just texted me that Kim Klein was here, who's the president of the university. Nope, she's not here. Okay. Well, come here. Kim, you want to say something? You want to say something? Hello to everybody? And you did a great job with the technology. There she is. She's now has the camera on her. They did a great job with the technology. This was a very well done event. I want to thank my staff again for doing a great job. I want to thank the partners that I mentioned and are on the back of your brochures, Roger Clayman, Phil Ruggili, Mariah Dignan, and I want to thank all of our panelists for participating today. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks so much. Network with each other.